I'm Emily. Jake, my older brother by 2 years, is a scientist. He's living his dream of working in research and seems really happy with it, even though he's busy all day. Our son, Mike, is 3 years old, just like Jake. He loves watching and trying out new things. Right now, he's really into the goldfish he caught at the fall festival. Our daughter, Sarah, is 1 year old. She loves to eat, and her chubby cheeks are just so cute. She brings so much happiness to our home. Life is pretty good for our regular family, except for one thing. Emily, what are we having for dinner tonight? Mother-in-law. Just as I was trying to calm down my crying daughter and finish cooking dinner, the doorbell rang without warning. My mother-in-law strolled into our house, as she often does around this time. While it's not always on the same day each week, her visits are frequent enough that my son hardly even glances away from the TV. My goodness, fried food again. That's not good, too oily. You should take better care of Jake's stomach when he comes home tired from work. It's not good for the grandkids either. But Mike really enjoys it. Well, that's because you only give him junk. Look, I've made a creamy vegetable stew and minestrone for you. It's important for the kids to get used to Western food from an early age. My mother-in-law began setting the table with the large containers of creamy stew and minestrone she brought. It's a lot, enough to last for at least 3 days, and I felt a bit disheartened just looking at the stew, which was mostly carrots and cabbage. Come on, snap out of it. I'll take the food you made home with me, so go ahead and pack it up. It's not tasty, but we can't waste food. This was routine. Last time she visited unexpectedly, she replaced my clam chowder with her own fried chicken. She left without even sparing a glance at her grandchildren, clutching the still warm container. Once the front door closed, my son turned to me. Softly, Grandma took my fried chicken again. My heart ached seeing the sadness on my son's face. Don't worry, there's a little bit of meat left. Just wait a moment. Yay! As I heated up the oil again, I felt relieved seeing my son's joyful reaction to my words. However, my inner dissatisfaction lingered. My mother-in-law had become increasingly intrusive since my marriage, and it had worsened over the last year. Every week, she showed up unannounced during dinner prep time. Initially, she would just criticize my cooking and parenting, then leave her cream stew on the counter. But for the past 6 months, she started taking my food home with her, effectively ruining our meal. I couldn't fathom my mother-in-law, who lived alone since my father-in-law passed away, eating all 3 servings. She was probably throwing it away. As I prepared baby food and distracted the kids, I managed to cook. It was tough, but seeing my family's happy faces kept me going. Yet, my fried chicken, braised pork, mapo tofu, and hamburgers, all of it, got taken away. I grew up in a family that owned a restaurant, and my dad taught me how to cook, so I'm pretty confident in my culinary skills. And honestly, I think my food tastes better than my mother-in-law's overly sweet cream stew. It bothers me to have my abilities undermined by her, but with Mike in the picture, I've been finding it hard to stand up to my mother-in-law, who is also his grandma. More cream stew? Jake, who comes home after the kids have gone to sleep, makes a face when he sees dinner. Since only Mike's share of fried chicken was left, I served Jake a large platter of the cream stew. What can I do? It's what my mother-in-law brings over. If you don't like it, you can tell her. Yeah, I guess. Jake pokes at the stew, showing little enthusiasm. He shows up without considering Sarah's nap time and even takes away Mike's favorite foods right in front of him. Well, she's lonely since Dad died. That was 2 years ago. How much longer do I have to put up with this? Yeah, I guess. Jake is usually dependable, but he avoids confrontation when it comes to his mother-in-law. Another fruitless conversation passes, and I let out a deep sigh. The only positive thing is that she hasn't suggested moving in. One day, tired of the usual routine, my mother-in-law drops a bombshell during dinner. Instead of her typical greeting, she announces, Emily, this Christmas, everyone's gathering at our place. What? But after your father passed away last year, we haven't really been able to do much. We've relied on relatives from Dad's side since the funeral, so I'm inviting them to our home as a way of saying thank you, she explains. Sounds exhausting, I respond, lacking enthusiasm. I wonder how she plans to host suddenly when we've always gathered at her brother-in-law's or her own childhood home for Christmas and family reunions. She frowns at me, as if dealing with someone of lesser intelligence. You're not just a bystander here. You'll be helping too, she declares. What? Come over on the 24th and help clean up, she adds, surprising me with her audacious decision. But Sarah is so young. Just use a baby carrier or something. That's how women used to do it back in the day, she suggests, brushing aside my objections. Maybe, but you're also in charge of the full-course Christmas meal. Don't you dare repackage store-bought food or cook anything that tastes bad. I don't want to be embarrassed, she warns. What? You can't be serious, I protest. I'm thinking of inviting your dad's relatives on one day and my sister's family and our daughter on another. It'll be a busy holiday, she continues, though her complaints are tinged with a hint of satisfaction. Hold on, the one who's going to be busy is me, not you. As the daughter-in-law of this family's eldest son, do your duty properly, okay, she concludes before leaving me stunned and my son surprised. She doesn't forget to pack the shrimp gratin that just needs to be baked. That night, when I share my mother-in-law's plans with Jake, he's just as puzzled as I am. What? She's organizing a party on Christmas Eve? Inviting Dad's side of the family when he's not here. Yeah, that's the idea, I confirm. Well, maybe Mom's feeling lonely, Jake suggests. I finally lose my temper at Jake's predictable response. Think about what it's like for me, always being pushed around. Seeing Jake's expression shift to one of realization, he falls silent. Even he understands that this time, it's too much, and he lets out a resigned sigh. All right, I'll handle the cleaning and entertaining the relatives. Really? I'm relieved to hear Jake's offer. It gives me some direction. But can you still cook the full-course Christmas meal? He asks. Just for this year. Let's keep Mom's reputation intact. Plus, everyone in the family loves your cooking, he pleads, eyeing the meatloaf his mother left for us. I mean, it's hard to say no after making a concession, he adds. Fine, just for this year. Thanks, man. I can't wait for Emily's Christmas feast. I say, grateful for his understanding. Geez, you're in high spirits, aren't you? Jake remarks, smiling. Being praised isn't so bad, and I don't mind cooking for people. So I prepare myself mentally, knowing it's just for this time, and agree to prepare a full-course Christmas meal. When I inform my mother-in-law that Jake will stay over to help with cleaning, she makes a displeased face and says, "How could you let the man of the house do such things?" But she seems reasonably satisfied, seeing Jake bustling around at his parents' home for my sake. Then comes Christmas lunchtime. Emily, is the corn soup ready? My mother-in-law asks. I'm preparing the croutons now, I reply, scurrying around the kitchen to get the carpaccio and corn soup ready. You're so inefficient. I'll bring the food myself, she criticizes. I'm sorry. If you're going to complain, try preparing a meal for 20 people. It's really, truly exhausting, I retort, feeling the strain of the day. Finally, the serving is done, and I sit down at the party, relieved to have made it through. Jake seems to have settled our daughter down for a nap in another room. Despite the challenge of preparing a full-course Christmas meal for 20 people, it's gratifying to see everyone relishing my cooking. However, this feeling of satisfaction is short-lived. This quiche looks so beautiful. It's like something you'd buy, someone compliments. Ah, thank you, I reply, feeling a bit uneasy. You're good at flattery. This carrot slaw is perfectly balanced with the vinegar. The orange scent really freshens up your mouth, another guest remarks. That's because Christmas meals tend to be rich, so I made it a bit more acidic, I explain. Something feels off. Every time someone tries to praise my Christmas cooking, my mother-in-law interrupts with her own commentary. Finally, Sophia, father-in-law's sister, unwittingly unveils the source of the awkwardness. Emily, your mother-in-law is such a great cook, isn't she? Excuse me? I respond, taken aback. Unfazed, Sophie continues, did Olivia make this entire Christmas feast? That's amazing. Huh? I haven't cooked a full-course Christmas meal in ages. I was going to leave it to my daughter-in-law, but she's absolutely terrible in the kitchen and she never comes by. Even when I offer to teach her, my mother-in-law chimes in, completely disregarding the truth. I'm left dumbfounded by her audacious claims. Oh, Emily, you should really take after Olivia while she's still well. Jake might miss the taste of home sometimes, you know? The way to a man's heart is through his stomach, she adds, seemingly offering advice but actually delivering a veiled insult. Daniel, a relative nearby, laughs, adding to my discomfort. You know, Olivia, that pork belly stew you made last time was delicious. It's amazing you can cook both Western and Japanese dishes. It's not that big of a deal, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. My mother-in-law replies with false modesty, knowing full well that the pork belly stew was my creation. As I stand there, stunned, she silently mouths, "Go along with it." It becomes apparent that she's been claiming credit for all my dishes, including the Christmas feast, and sharing them with the family. Now she wants me to go along with her lie. No way! Especially after all the times she criticized my cooking. Even though I want to speak up, I feel overwhelmed by the crowd and can't find my voice. But then my son comes to the rescue. Mom, this omelet is really tasty. It looks different than usual, but your omelets are always good. His young voice cuts through the noise, silencing the adults. Oh, Mike, this is actually quiche your grandmother made. Sophia tries to cover for him, probably out of kindness, but my son is adamant. Huh? But it's tasty, so it's got to be Mom's omelette. Grandma's omelette is super sweet and gritty. It doesn't taste good. He insists passionately, waving his hands around, leaving the adults looking puzzled. Of course, my mother-in-law panics. Emily, don't teach the child to lie. Excuse me? Who's the one lying here, Mom? Am I a liar? Mike looks up at me, his face full of uncertainty. That's when I felt my anger rising. I felt silly. I didn't care what people thought of my mother-in-law or Jake. I tolerated her because she's Jake's mom and Mike's grandma, but turning my grandson into a liar just to save face? That's not right. If she's going to make my child lie, I'll stand up for what's right, even if it means being seen as the bad guy. I took a deep breath and stood tall. Mike isn't a liar. You're the one lying, Grandma. Huh, she looked surprised. She probably didn't expect me to confront her. I stood up and pointed dramatically at the table. I made this entire Christmas meal, including the corn soup, from start to finish. What? The room erupted in shock. My flustered mother-in-law began to panic and shout, Wait, Emily, you're lying. Are you out of your mind? I'm not lying, Sophia. You said you got the pork belly stew from Grandma, right? I turned to Sophia, who looked surprised. Ah, yes, it was delicious, Sophia admitted. I made that too, I revealed. Huh? Sophia looked bewildered. You're terrible, taking credit for Jake's mom's cooking and trying to frame her. You're the worst daughter-in-law. Then can you tell me the recipe for the pork belly stew, mother-in-law? I challenged. What? Well, she hesitated, then suddenly exclaimed, It's a secret. It's a secret family recipe, so I can't tell you in public. You don't have to give details or measurements, just the basics, I insisted. Even the relatives who were disgusted by our petty fight started to see who was in the right. Emily, that's enough. My husband Jake intervened. He had apparently finished putting our daughter to sleep and silently appeared near the door, restraining me with a stern voice and face. My mother-in-law clung to Jake as if he was her ally, looking like a tragic heroine. Jake, what's up with your daughter-in-law? She's calling me a liar. That's awful, Mom. You're the awful one here. What? Mother-in-law's mouth dropped open. This entire Christmas feast? Emily made it all? Yes, she did, while taking care of the kids. Trying to take credit for it is pretty low, Jake, I affirmed. Sophia, the only thing Mom made is that massive bowl of creamy stew over there. Have you tried it? Jake pointed out. Huh? Yeah, Sophia responded, visibly shaken. Yeah, it was insanely sweet, wasn't it? Mom thinks if it's sweet, it's tasty. She's always been so cautious about salt and oil, but uses sugar with no limits, so all her dishes taste like a block of sugar, Jake explained. Is that so? The pork belly stew was probably made by my daughter-in-law too. If you got any other dishes from Mom recently, they were likely made by Emily, Jake continued. Really? Even that meatloaf? Sophie asked. That was me. And the mapo tofu and shrimp gratin. That was me, I confirmed. Everyone in the family was disillusioned with mother-in-law because of her own son's revelation. Isn't that right, Mom? Jake challenged. Mother-in-law, exposed for all her lies, started panicking. It seemed like she had given up on lying and was now trying to appeal to Jake's emotions. Why? Why were you siding with your daughter-in-law? I'm your mom, she pleaded. I didn't want to have to say this either, Mom, Jake responded solemnly. I thought you were just lonely because Dad isn't here, so I've been having Emily put up with you. But this isn't anything but harassment towards her. There's no reason to protect you anymore. Don't see Emily or the kids ever again, Jake firmly tells his mother, dismissing her pleas. He starts cleaning up the Christmas feast and then apologizes to the relatives. I'm sorry for the disturbance this Christmas, Emily. Mike, let's go, Jake says as he takes Mike's hand and stands up. Mike looks at his grandmother and asks, Grandma, where's your I'm sorry? Huh? When you lie, you say I'm sorry, then you get forgiven, right? Isn't that right, Mom? Mike questions. Huh? His grandmother stammers, unable to respond. I get it. You have to be forgiving when it comes to raising kids, but a simple sorry isn't going to cut it, Jake remarks. Seeing his mother's reluctance to apologize, he sighs in resignation. Grandma can't even say I'm sorry, and she's supposed to be an adult. How sad. Let's go home and have Mom's delicious Christmas feast, okay? Jake suggests to Mike. Oh, we left behind a growling mother-in-law and confused relatives, carrying our sleeping daughter and the Christmas feast as we left Mike's house. We went straight to my parents' place and served the Christmas feast. Everyone was delighted and ate with joy. This is what I had been striving for, so my heart was full. Jake, of course, apologized profusely and promised never to let us meet mother-in-law again. The atmosphere at my house stayed uncomfortable. The relatives left, leaving only my mother-in-law and some bland food. The next day, my mother-in-law's sister, her husband, and Jake's sister visited as promised. When they saw the bland food, they laughed and said, We expected as much. It seems my mother-in-law's lack of cooking skills was well known among her relatives. So you boasted about hosting a Christmas feast? I wondered what trick you'd pull, they teased. Maybe you're just jealous of Emily, who's good at cooking and praised by Jake and Mike. Sorry for the inconvenience, they added. After hearing the details from Jake, my sister-in-law thanked me for my efforts. I'm sorry for jumping to conclusions. Turns out Sophia also enjoys cooking, and we bonded over a recipe for braised pork belly, she said. The misunderstanding with Jake was cleared up, and I found new friends who share my cooking hobby. I felt refreshed, enjoying a carefree Christmas. Of course, my mother-in-law wasn't going to give up easily, but I was prepared. As I was making cornbread, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. She was furious on the other end of the line. Excuse me, where are you? It's dinner time. Do your duty as a wife. Are you making the same mistake and coming over again? She scolded. No thanks, I replied. What? You'll be the one left out by the family, she warned. That won't be a problem. Actually, it was you who got shunned by the relatives. I've even made plans to cook with Sophia next time, I informed her. What? Mother-in-law probably never imagined that I'd become close to father-in-law's side of the family. I informed my mother-in-law that I wouldn't be returning to her house. Instead, my kids and I have been staying at my parents' house since Christmas. We're planning to find a new place to live now that the holidays are over. Despite my mother-in-law's insistence on living near her, Jake's workplace is closer to my parents' house. Since my mother-in-law couldn't heed Jake's warning to stay away from me, we've decided to physically distance ourselves. Right now, Jake is the only one living at his parents' house, and he'll leave once he's ready. When my mother-in-law demanded to know where we were, I simply responded that she couldn't get away with not cherishing Jake's mom. However, I reminded her that both Jake and his sister had forgiven her, so it was okay. With that, I thanked her for everything and said goodbye before hanging up and blocking her number to ensure I never had to hear her voice again. 2 years later, my family eagerly waits for my cooking in the living room, playing around as I fry burgers in the kitchen. It warms my heart to see them eagerly awaiting my cooking with smiles on their faces.
I've longed for children, but you're the reason we couldn't have them. My husband spat out, hurling those hurtful words at me after 20 years of marriage. In that moment, I realized I couldn't continue with him. His callousness cut deep and his mind was elsewhere, dreaming of a new life without me. It felt as if some divine eye had witnessed his cruelty. My name is Lisa, 45 years old, a secretary at a law firm. Our marriage, nearing 2 decades, had been modest and childless. Despite our shared desire for children, infertility plagued us, primarily my own struggles. I underwent treatments, exhausting myself physically, emotionally, and financially, only to face disappointment. When I turned 40, we conceded defeat. My husband's desire for children persisted, but I couldn't endure the pain and financial strain any longer. We decided to halt treatments and embrace a childless life, opting for luxury trips instead. Yet the pang of regret lingered, especially when confronted with images of children on TV or greeting cards. Even 5 years post-treatments, guilt and remorse gnawed at me. Then, a school reunion beckoned after a decade. My husband encouraged me to take a break, sensing it as a mini vacation. It felt like a temporary escape from the weight of our childless existence. I realized I had scarcely been out alone since our wedding day, my life consumed by infertility treatments. But a little indulgence now and then couldn't hurt, right? At the venue, catching up with old friends felt refreshing. Lisa, long time no see. You look great, slimmer than before, one friend remarked. Indeed, I had shed about 22 pounds over the past decade. Thanks, I replied with a smile. I envy you. Since marriage and kids, I've gained almost 33 pounds, she lamented. Her words, though innocent, stung a bit. Any kids for you? Another friend asked. No, we couldn't, I replied, feeling the weight of the question. Just the two of us. Oh, sorry for asking such an awkward question, she apologized. No worries, let's just enjoy ourselves, I reassured, trying to maintain a lively atmosphere. As conversation flowed, a startling revelation emerged. My son was nearly caught in a marriage scam recently, one classmate shared. I was taken aback. A scam. Yes, they asked him for $20,000 for their wedding, but it fell through, she explained. What happened next? I inquired, intrigued. He couldn't afford it, so he came to us for advice. That's when we uncovered the scam. The woman vanished, she recounted. It's terrifying, I murmured, shaken by the story. There are some awful people out there, another friend chimed in. Really scary. A marriage scam, I mused, shocked that such deceit could occur so close to home. Thankfully, her son had moved on with a new girlfriend, and the parents seemed relieved. The reunion continued smoothly, eventually winding down. Instead of heading to the after party, I decided to head home, reflecting on the evening's unexpected revelations. I returned to my hotel, savoring a nightcap alone. It struck me, I hadn't checked in with my husband. It was only 10 p.m. He should still be awake. Despite repeated calls, he didn't answer. Perhaps he already turned in. Well, I'd be back tomorrow, so it wasn't a pressing concern. Yet an uneasy feeling gnawed at me. Was it women's intuition? Something felt off. From then on, my husband started arriving home unusually late on weekdays, often inebriated. Hey, I'm home, he slurred one night, collapsing onto the living room floor. Are you okay? I asked, concern creeping into my voice. Shut up, I'm home. Show some respect, he retorted, his words clouded by alcohol. As I tidied up his discarded clothes, he muttered something about Alyssa. You know, if you were as young as Alyssa. Confusion gripped me. Who was Alyssa? What did he mean by his words? Before I could inquire further, he was already asleep. Could he be cheating on me? The unease I felt that day morphed into a creeping certainty. But no, my husband was a good man. It must be drunken nonsense. Yet doubts lingered, unsettling my thoughts. I tried to reassure myself, but my husband's erratic behavior gnawed at me. Weekends meant early departures and late returns, often accompanied by the stench of alcohol. It had become a pattern I could no longer ignore. You're going out drinking almost every day lately. Are we okay? I ventured one evening. Mind your own business. It's my money, he snapped back, dismissive of my concern. But we need to save for our future, I insisted. His response cut deep. Well, I've spent quite a bit on treatments. That's because you're defective. Even in his inebriated state, his words stung. I could have fathomed he'd speak to me that way. As time passed, his disparaging remarks grew more frequent. Since you can't have kids, you should focus on showing affection to me, he'd say. With each selfish act, my love for him waned. Gone was the caring husband who once supported me through treatments. Would he ever return? After 20 years, I began questioning the essence of our marriage. But before I could confront him about it, he dropped a bombshell. We need to talk, he said, his demeanor serious. I returned from work to find him on the sofa, his expression grave. What's wrong? Why are you being so formal? I asked, sensing something was amiss. I want a divorce, he declared bluntly. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. You're joking, right? Why would you say that all of a sudden? I pleaded, hoping for reassurance. But the idea of divorce had never crossed his mind before. Yes, he confirmed, leaving me stunned and bewildered. The revelation hit me like a tidal wave. Divorce? Had my husband been considering it all along? I confronted him, desperate for clarity. Out of the blue, you want a divorce? What's going on? I demanded, my emotions raw. We've been together for 20 years, haven't we? Let's talk this through, I urged, hoping for understanding. But he met my plea with contempt. You're clueless, aren't you? He scoffed, his tone laced with bitterness. Confusion clouded my mind. What do you mean? For 20 years, I've wanted children. But because of you, I've been denied that chance, he accused, his words cutting deep. His revelation blindsided me. That's not fair. We decided together to stop treatments, I countered, feeling the weight of sadness and frustration. I was never okay with that. I've always wanted a child, he confessed, his voice heavy with regret. Tears threatened to spill as the reality sank in. Well, if you sign the divorce papers, I won't have anything else to say, he declared proudly, pushing the papers toward me. But his next words struck like lightning. I've already decided to remarry. Remarry? With a 20-year-old? I gasped, disbelief coursing through me. That's right. Alyssa, he confirmed, a smug satisfaction in his tone. Alyssa, the name echoed in my mind, the same name he had mentioned before. Woman's intuition, it seemed, was not to be underestimated. I felt a flicker of self-satisfaction, but I knew it wasn't the time for indulgence. Then my husband showed me a picture of his so-called adorable Alyssa. As I examined it closely, I struggled to contain my laughter. Surely, this had to be a joke. How could something like this be real? I prayed he didn't notice my odd reaction and swiftly composed myself. So, you really want a child that badly? I questioned, masking my incredulity. Yes, because you can't give birth. There's nothing we can do about that, right? You'll agree to the divorce, won't you? He pressed, oblivious to my internal turmoil. I suppose there's no choice, I replied, feigning distress, though secretly his sheer idiocy made the decision easier. With each passing moment, the thought of divorcing him grew more appealing. It felt like divine intervention guiding me toward the right path. With a heavy heart, or so I pretended, I signed the divorce papers and left him behind. I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. Surely, he would regret his actions soon enough. Time would tell. Fast forward a year after the divorce, and I encountered him on my way home from work. His appearance shocked me. Lisa, please help me, he pleaded, his shabby appearance a stark contrast to the man I once knew. Excuse me, who are you? I asked, genuinely not recognizing him. It's me, Lisa. I need your help, he insisted, desperation evident in his voice. I hesitated, taken aback by his transformation. Long time no see, I finally managed, unsure of how to react. In that moment, I realized the tables had turned. It was now his turn to seek assistance, and I held all the cards. Please introduce me to your company's lawyer, he implored, his request a humbling reminder of his downfall. I couldn't just agree to help out of the blue. It seemed my ex-husband was facing financial troubles. I had sensed it from his appearance, but I never imagined he would change so drastically within a year. If it's your first consultation, it's free. But to hire them, you'll have to pay their fee, I explained, trying to navigate the situation. I don't have that kind of money. Please help me, he pleaded, desperation evident in his voice. Perplexed by his sudden predicament, I decided to hear him out. We found ourselves in a nearby cafe where he began to share his story. Well, actually, he started, but before he could finish, I interjected. Did that girl Alyssa run off? I asked, a sudden realization dawning on me. How did you know? He responded, surprise evident in his voice. Just as I suspected. When you showed me a picture of a girl named Alyssa, it clicked. She looked exactly like the one who killed a classmate's son at a reunion, I explained, recalling the warning given by the classmate about a woman named Sally, approximately 22 years old. Her age and name are probably fake, of course. The swindler wouldn't use her real name, I added, connecting the dots. Of course you knew about Alyssa, didn't you? He questioned, realization settling in. Well, I guess you could say I knew. But what happened? I inquired, eager to unravel the full story. When I pressed my husband for an explanation, this was the story he offered. About a year ago, he met a woman named Alyssa at a nightclub. My husband, who had always harbored a desire for children, seemed to have shared his thoughts with her. It was during one of these conversations that Alyssa made an astonishing offer. She could bear a child for him. Their relationship blossomed from there. He started frequenting the club almost every weekday and spent weekends with Alyssa outside its confines. In the process, he depleted $10,000 from his savings, accumulated during his single days. Despite this, Alyssa never demanded lavish gifts or expensive outings. She was content just to share a drink with him at the club. She was different, he insisted. Not like the stereotypical club girls you often hear about. She didn't care about designer goods or jewelry. She was happy as long as I was there with her. He painted Alyssa as hardworking and sincere, emphasizing their agreement not to touch each other's savings from their single days. I thought it was his money and he could use it as he pleased, I admitted, unaware of his extravagant spending. Then my husband revealed the twist in the tale. Alyssa's true colors had emerged. I want to get married, but I had debts totaling about $20,000. Then my husband promised to take on Alyssa's debt and transferred the money to her, I recounted, my voice heavy with regret. They moved in together right after our divorce, but Alyssa continued her nighttime work and rarely came home. Eventually, she quit her job at the club and disappeared, taking all the money with her. How could he be so foolish? I lamented, feeling a sense of despair at having been married to such a man for 20 years. Did you make a promissory note? I inquired, hoping for some semblance of responsibility. A what? My husband looked puzzled. You lent her money, didn't you? Didn't you get a note? I pressed, frustration creeping into my tone. We were going to be a couple, so I didn't do such a thing, he admitted. So, you basically gave her the money, is that it? I asked incredulously. In this case, it seems like you donated $20,000 to Alyssa out of goodwill, I concluded, my disappointment palpable. This woman must be a pro, I mused, realizing the extent of her deception. In the case of donations, if the amount exceeds $11,000 in a year, gift tax is imposed. Depending on the case, the receiver might be taxed. So, Alyssa just took $20,000 in cash and vanished, splitting the money into two parts across 2 different years to avoid taxes. The reason my husband thought she was a good girl who never asked for material gifts was because she knew the law well. So, what should I do? I asked, feeling overwhelmed. I don't know. Maybe consult a lawyer. It'll cost you though, he replied, his shoulders slumping in defeat. All my savings from my single days are gone, and the woman I loved ran away from me. I can't go back on my word to the company about remarrying after boasting about getting a younger wife. Isn't that his own doing? I thought, feeling the weight of my husband's pitiful situation. Lisa, it's my fault. Please come back to me, he pleaded. I realized after you were gone, you were the only one who cared about me. I don't need kids anymore. I'll let you do as you like. You must have been lonely too, right? But his misunderstanding persisted. That matter had ended half a year ago in my mind, so I confronted him with reality. You know, it's been a year. What's with this sudden change of heart? Isn't it a little too late now? Lisa, are you going to abandon me? Well, it was you who pushed for our divorce in the first place, remember? I reminded him. You're the only one I can rely on. My ex-husband looked utterly exhausted, and I decided to show him a little mercy. All right then, shall I call up a lawyer friend of mine? Lisa, thank you. I knew I could count on you, he said, tears welling up in his eyes. Mr. Johnson, the lawyer for my company, arrived at the coffee shop. John, over here, I called out, and my ex-husband seemed somewhat perplexed by our overly familiar demeanor. You see, we've been dating for the past 6 months now, I explained. What was it you needed advice on? As I finished speaking, my ex-husband looked as if he was in a daze. No, well, I think that'll be it for today, he muttered, suddenly snapping back to reality and hurriedly leaving the coffee shop. In the end, he couldn't afford to hire a lawyer and resigned himself to his fate. Rumor had it that his company was abuzz with talk of his unfortunate situation, left by his soon-to-be wife and ignored by his ex-wife. As Mr. Johnson and I spoke later, I confessed the truth about the charade. I'm sorry for involving you in all this, I apologized. No worries, Lisa. I'm glad I could be of help, he reassured me. By the way, do you have any plans after this? Caught off guard by the unexpected turn of events, I was a little flustered, but a fresh start in my mid-40s didn't seem like such a bad beginning. Yes, I'd love to, I agreed, certain that a fun-filled future was awaiting me. I couldn't shake off this feeling of excitement. Guess what, Rosalie? My family's coming over, and you're in charge of hosting them at this fancy restaurant. Can you handle that? Oh, and by the way, do you know how to manage money? You didn't save anything, did you? Rosalie was puzzled. What do you mean? What's mine is yours. So, this restaurant you own. It's mine too. Everything's free. That sounded crazy to Rosalie. Her husband Kyle seemed clueless, thinking he could just invite the family over and not pay. Something wasn't right. Plus, he didn't seem to get it. He was about to land himself in trouble. Kyle, we can't give everything away for free. But don't worry about the money. I know you don't have savings, and I knew you were inviting the family today. So, I already arranged for someone else to pay in advance. Stop lying. I never mentioned inviting the family, and none of them said anything about being billed. My husband insisted, gesturing toward our relatives. His parents, his brother, his wife, and a few others were chatting with a waitress nearby. He smirked and made fun of them while I struggled not to burst out laughing, my lips twitching. I've been getting ready for this day. I'll do my best to entertain them just like you want, I replied, smiling to myself as I listened to him. Our in-laws approached. Hi, Rosalie. We're here to visit today. What a lovely place this is. Everyone seems to be having a great time, they said warmly, their demeanor a sharp contrast to my husband's. Mom, Dad, thanks for coming. Rosalie's happy you're here. Today's on me, my husband said casually, even though he planned to eat for free. He lied effortlessly, not just to his parents but probably to his brother and other relatives too. He's lied before, but he's so confident he won't get caught because everyone sees him as the perfect son. Rosalie's really been excelling. She took over the restaurant from her late parents and has been running it impressively. It wasn't easy at first, but she turned things around. She's my pride and joy, he boasted to his parents, deliberately praising me, his pride and joy, to deceive them. But in reality, he barely sees me as more than a maid. As he spoke, my in-laws turned to me, nodding in approval. They've always recognized my efforts since the beginning of our marriage. Their kindness shone through their eyes. Meanwhile, my husband subtly changed his expression, silently warning me to keep quiet. Rosalie's been working hard, and Kyle's doing well too. Everything's going smoothly at Brown Trading, right? Your salary's been increasing, hasn't it? They asked. Yeah, that's correct. I'm respected at Brown Trading, and my boss has high hopes for me. I aim to lead my team through actions and results, and I'll keep up the good work, my husband replied confidently. That's our son, all right. Spending $155,000 like that isn't something just anyone can do, his parents remarked proudly, but my husband's expression darkened slightly at that moment. Today, we have 15 relatives dining with us, including my in-laws and brother-in-law's family. It's $11,000 per person, totaling $115,000. I calculated silently, knowing my husband was trying to get it all for free, unaware of the cost. When he realized it was pricier than he thought, he quickly regained composure to avoid exposing his lie. This one's on me, everyone. It's the least I can do. I just got my bonus, so no worries at all. Leave it to me, he declared, puffing up his chest as the in-laws chuckled softly. Checking the time, it was 6:00 p.m., so I guided my husband and in-laws to their reserved seats. The other relatives followed suit. Just as they were settling in, my husband shot me a creepy grin. An hour later, I approached their table in the banquet room. They were enjoying themselves, oblivious to the surroundings. Feel free to order more, everyone. It boosts restaurant sales, and Rosalie will be delighted, so go ahead, my husband encouraged, each word accompanied by a flurry of extra orders. With the banquet meals and additional orders, the bill had surpassed $20,000. Everyone assumed my husband, a corporate elite with a hefty income, was treating them. While some hesitated, my husband seemed to push them to order more. That's when I decided to set the record straight, loud enough for all to hear. Since it's Kyle's treat, I had $60,000 transferred yesterday, so everyone, please enjoy yourselves without holding back, I announced, causing a buzz of surprise among the relatives. $60,000. Classic Kyle, were words of almost admiration that flew around. While the relatives reacted like this, my husband wore a bewildered look, clueless about what was going on. I didn't miss his expression and added a line to start my counterattack. Well, the $60,000 isn't for the food. It's for alimony, actually, I stated, causing puzzled looks among the buzzing relatives. Alimony, Kyle? What's this about alimony? One of them asked. No, I don't know about any alimony. Sometimes Rosalie jokes around, so please don't mind her. Come on, Rosalie, don't upset everyone with jokes like that. My husband tried to brush it off, but he was clearly the most troubled. His face was smiling, but his eyes told a different story. The way he looked at me was terrifying. But it wasn't done. Kyle, you're the one making uncomfortable jokes here. I think it's time the family knew that, right? I said firmly, handing him a piece of paper and a bank book. As he examined them closely, his face turned pale. The alimony is for cheating. Kyle has been unfaithful. He's not the person you all think he is. He can lie and deceive people without a second thought, I revealed. The atmosphere in the banquet room shifted abruptly. The once lively chatter ceased, replaced by an eerie silence. The document I handed to my husband was the original alimony claim, and the bank book showed a record of a $60,000 transfer. Everyone's attention was fixed on my husband and me, and silence lingered for a few seconds. But it was my husband who broke it. How funny, Rosalie. That's quite something. It looks just like a real statement in a bank book, but really, this is going too far. There's no way I would cheat. It seemed like he had shifted back to his usual confident demeanor, but that confidence quickly faded, and I couldn't help but smile. What are you talking about, Kyle? You're the one who's gone too far. Not only cheating but also trying to bully me into eating for free, lying to all the relatives that it's your treat. That's too much of a joke. Correct yourself quickly, everyone. Don't take Rosalie's words to heart. Without needing to say anything, the relatives seemed unable to believe it outright, and no one spoke up. I didn't react to my husband's words either, just watching his actions closely. Gradually, he started to panic. That's when he tried to get his parents on his side. Dad, Mom, tell her to stop these senseless jokes at a time like this. Ah yes, everyone calm down and listen to me, his dad began. Rosalie isn't making any senseless jokes. She's just stating the facts. It's undeniable that Kyle has been unfaithful, and she's not threatening Rosie. He's trying to get today's meal for free too. What are you two even saying? Are you taking what Rosie said seriously? That's not funny at all, my husband protested, but his parents seemed convinced. The only thing that's not funny is this situation. We've come here knowing everything to confront you, I declared. Yes, I had already confessed everything to my in-laws, revealing how my husband uses his outward kindness to play the dutiful son while behind the scenes, he's up to no good. Even as we waited for our reservation time, he tried to deceive his parents, but they saw through his lies. Enough. I would never deceive everyone. You're ruining the good mood we had, Rosalie. What are you going to do about this? My disclosure and having the in-laws on my side were completely unexpected for him. He visibly started to lose his composure, standing up and glaring at me intensely, as if he might lunge at me any moment. Come on, brother, calm down. Let's sit down and talk this over calmly. Nicholas, you believe me, right? Interjected his brother, my brother-in-law Nicholas, cutting through my husband's angry shouts. Nicholas, busy with his own job, was attending today with his wife Yasmin. I knew Nicholas and my husband had been close since before I started dating him, and he is as gentle and consistently smiling as the in-laws. However, Nicholas's next action would utterly defeat my husband. He pulled a thick envelope out of his bag and handed it to my husband, saying, You believe me, right, brother? How can I believe you when you've been cheating with my wife, Nicholas? You what? My husband's accusation hung heavy in the air as Nicholas handed over the envelope. Inside was a report on the infidelity investigation. It turns out my husband had been cheating with Nicholas's wife, Yasmin. Just before my father-in-law had said, "We've come here knowing everything," and by we, he meant the brother-in-law's family too. And it turns out, I learned about my husband's infidelity thanks to Nicholas. Hesitantly, my husband checked the contents of the envelope, turning pale as a ghost. Inside were numerous photos of him cheating with Yasmin, pictures of them dining at a fancy restaurant, looking into each other's eyes. There were photos of them being cozy in a car and others of them embracing and kissing in front of a hotel. There's no way he could just say they were just going out. It was indeed a decisive moment, a hellish scene. "Is this a joke? Unbelievable, Kyle did this," were the whispers I heard. The relatives around us were in turmoil, and the banquet hall buzzed in a whole different way. For my husband, it couldn't have gotten any worse. He was completely flustered now. No, wait. This investigation report is fake. The photos must be doctored because I haven't cheated with Yasmin. "We didn't cheat, right?" he pleaded, trying to enlist Yasmin's support in his last-ditch effort. Immediately after Yasmin, now the center of attention, bowed deeply to the floor in full prostration. "Everyone, I am terribly sorry. I have had an affair with Kyle." Yasmin's confession stunned the room. My husband in particular was visibly shaken. He hadn't anticipated Yasmin fully admitting to the affair. He had been insisting the alimony bill and the bank book were fake, only thinking of himself and taking me for granted. He couldn't have imagined this. Yasmin's earnest apology captivated not only my husband but also the rest of the banquet hall. But it wasn't just my husband who was affected. All the relatives were stunned by Yasmin's admission. As her forehead remained on the floor, she slowly began to speak. "It really was just a fling. Nicholas is a wonderful husband, but, well, it lacked excitement, you might say. Just doing housework and waiting at home for Nicholas to return, I started to feel like my life would forever be the same. And suddenly, I got bored. When I approached Kyle, he was happy to go along. Everyone listened in silence to Yasmin's voice, mixed with regret and reflection. As she raised her head and revealed more truths, I tried to end it immediately, knowing it was wrong. But Kyle got serious about it. He threatened to expose everything if I tried to break it off. I know it sounds like an excuse now, but I am truly sorry. Yasmin's confession left the relatives staring in disbelief at such a lack of morals. Yasmin had initiated the affair, and though she was threatened, it's hard to completely sympathize with her. But she came here today to admit her mistakes and apologize, which is somewhat redeemable. However, my husband tried to escape by lying and making excuses, unaware that he was just tightening the noose around his own neck. He really is a fool, brother. It's all useless. I, Rosalie, and our parents know everything. I'm going to demand alimony from you, and you're going to pay Nicholas. When did you realize? You didn't even do an investigation. You must have been sure, right? Yes, I heard it from someone I truly despise, you brother. Right, Rosalie? That's right. It wasn't just Yasmin. He had his hands on other women too. What, Rosalie? How much do you know? Just give me a break already. Too bad, Kyle. I know everything, and if anyone should be asking for mercy, it's us. I never thought you'd even make a move on an employee at a restaurant. I continued, then called a woman into the banquet hall. This woman was the waitress who had been talking with the in-laws, Nicholas, Yasmin, and several other relatives while they waited for their reservation time. Turns out, while having an affair with Yasmin, my husband had also been making advances towards this waitress. She had also attended the same school with me back in our student days. Before even consulting Rosalie, who was the restaurant owner, she came to me. Kyle had threatened to destroy your family if you spilled the beans to Rosalie. You're really horrible. I've said it before, but we know everything, brother. All you can do now is admit your guilt and apologize, just like Yasmin did. Kyle, let me ask you something. Why would you deceive Rosalie to carry on with your affairs? From what we can see, Rosalie has been nothing but supportive. She's been managing the restaurant that she inherited from her parents and taking care of home as well. What does she ever do to you? Under the cold stares, my husband flinched at his father-in-law's question. I thought there was no valid excuse for infidelity, but if I had been unconsciously pushing him into a corner, I wanted to reflect on myself too. Awaiting his response, what he said next was shocking. I married Rosalie because I felt sorry for her. Before our marriage, she was struggling to turn the restaurant around with both parents gone. I was the only one she could rely on. I couldn't live without that feeling of superiority. And then what? Rosalie managed to turn it around. The restaurant became popular, and suddenly I found it boring. That's why I thought of dumping her, my husband said, smirking as if he had nothing to lose. Despite already knowing his true nature, a deep disgust welled up from within. It seemed he viewed everyone but himself as mere tools. The cold stares from the relatives quickly turned to pity. A feeling of superiority felt good, got bored, and decided to dump her. Kyle, do you realize what you're saying? You're successful in your big company because Rosalie supported you. Don't you have any gratitude? No, you're wrong. I succeeded because of my own skills. Besides, isn't it normal for a wife to support her husband? Does a mother serve a father expecting gratitude? No, right? Rosalie served me because she loved me. It's presumptuous to expect gratitude for that, my husband argued. Enough, Kyle. I find you repulsive. We are cutting ties with you, but we will watch you until you take responsibility. Be prepared. Fine, cut ties or whatever. I have a stable job. I can live on my own. In fact, it's a relief, right, Rosalie? You can enjoy life more without me around. I'll pay whatever alimony or anything else, so don't worry. My husband laughed, seemingly without a care. Looking at him, I thought again, he doesn't understand anything, knows nothing at all. Really? You can pay alimony? Aren't you about to be sued by your company, Kyle? A lawsuit for damages isn't cheap, you know, I retorted. What? The company's suing me? That's ridiculous. You were bragging today, weren't you, that you're respected at Brown Trading, that your boss has high expectations, that you lead your subordinates with actions and results. But it was all lies. In reality, you've been threatening your subordinates and embezzling company money. What? I would never do something like that. I rose through the ranks on my own merit. Don't talk nonsense when you know nothing, my husband protested. What you don't know, Kyle, is that all the subordinates you threatened have come forward. The company has been aware of the issue for a while. But you don't have to believe me, I'm just stating facts. It'll be interesting to see how far you fall. I explained to him in a calm tone, trying to make him understand. And the color drained from his face. If he really had no idea, he could have laughed it off. But the truth is, he was misbehaving at work too, so denying it was impossible. Seeing the realization dawn on him, he quickly turned, pleading, Rosalie, you're right. I knew nothing. I'd only said those things because I wanted to leave. Please continue to support me if we divorce now. I stopped him right there. Don't say anything more. The relatives are about to tear you apart, Kyle. It's too late for anything now, and it doesn't matter whether you knew or didn't know. No one will help you, and you'll get your wish to live alone. Oh, and by the way, make sure you pay for today's bill. It was your treat, wasn't it? The moment I said this, Kyle collapsed to his knees. No one reached out to help him. Today, after threatening me, deceiving the relatives to get a free meal, he finds himself unable to get off scot-free. Afterwards, I filed for divorce, and Kyle was sued by his company. Kyle ended up incurring a significant amount of debt. The reason Kyle had no savings despite dealing with Brown Trading was that he was footing the bill for entertainment expenses with the employees. However, this entertainment was merely a pretext. In reality, Kyle was just squandering money at nightclubs. Given that Kyle, who had a high-paying job, had no savings, it's clear he had been recklessly spending his money. This was entirely Kyle's own doing, so he should have dealt with it himself. But instead, he asked for help from his in-laws and Nicholas's family. Of course, no one was willing to help. Kyle had defiantly claimed he could live on his own and even laughed off being disowned. So it's no surprise, yet Kyle continued his futile attempts and kept sending messages to my smartphone incessantly. I was wrong. I shouldn't have cheated. I regret it. Please help me. The messages clearly showed he was desperate, but it felt like just another act, given his history of deceit and manipulation. It's hard to believe him still. I have not blocked Kyle's contact. I've left it unblocked so that I can receive his messages. I want to see what becomes of a person who has only thought of himself and demeaned others around him. It's uncertain what will happen to Kyle now that he has hit rock bottom. One thing I do know is that unless Kyle truly repents and changes himself, he will not be able to climb out of this pit. That much I am sure of. Rosalie, I am truly sorry for what my brother has done. It's irreparable. Nicholas apologized to me after divorcing Yasmin. The in-laws who came with him also deeply bowed their heads. I am a failure as a parent. I can't believe I didn't see my son's true nature sooner. If only I had realized earlier, this wouldn't have happened. Kyle took advantage of your kindness, Rosalie, and did whatever he wanted. It was our responsibility to stop him. You all don't need to apologize. If anything, I am grateful. I had no one else to rely on, no parents or relatives. So thank you for always being on my side. From the beginning of our marriage, the in-laws and Nicholas had been my allies. That I was able to turn around the inherited restaurant was possible only with their support. They are genuinely kind and always smiling. They showed such fury on my behalf that was incredibly comforting to me, who is utterly alone. I will never forget this warmth for as long as I live. My name is Bill, a 31-year-old working mom. I live with my husband Davy, who's also 31 and holds a regular job, and our 5-year-old daughter Lenny, who's recently turned into quite the chatterbox. We're just an average family, neither rich nor poor, and we get along great. But soon, our peaceful home was about to be disrupted. The storm approaching our home was none other than my mother-in-law. Davy's father had passed away, and his mother lived alone. When we got married, Davy and I had decided not to live with her. It just seemed simpler that way. Davy, being her only child born later in her life, had been married to me for 5 years. His mother-in-law was now getting older, and living alone at her age could be tough and even dangerous. Davy would visit her when he could, but it seemed she was struggling. Seeing my husband trying so hard on his own, I made a decision. If Davy was doing his best, how could I not support him as his wife? So, I gathered my courage and suggested to Davy that we should all live together. He looked surprised and asked, "Are you sure?" Truthfully, I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but I felt something needed to change. Balancing housework, childcare, and my part-time job was already a challenge, and if anything happened to mother-in-law, Davy would be the one to handle it. After discussing these important matters, we began living together. On a spring day with cherry blossoms falling, mother-in-law arrived at our home with tears in her eyes. I had thought living with such a humble woman would be smooth sailing, but I was mistaken. Initially reserved, as days passed, her true colors began to show. She started to torment me. "Bill, this dish is too salty. Can you make it lighter?" When I did, she'd criticize, "Why is it so bland? Are you mocking the elderly? How rude." And that was just the beginning. "Please hand wash all my clothes. They'll get ruined in the machine. They're all expensive, you know," she demanded. When I suggested dry cleaning, she retorted, "That's wasteful. You've lived comfortably thanks to my son, so stop wasting money and start saving." Clearly, she was just trying to annoy me. And that was just the beginner's level. Intermediate level torment went like this. "Bill, are you wearing makeup? It won't help. You're too plain." She'd comment on my appearance despite spending over 2 hours on her own makeup each morning, looking like a different person without it. I respect her desire to look beautiful, but isn't her foundation a bit too pale? I think to myself. What was worse, she threw away my precious makeup set. Nonchalantly, she said, "Makeup won't help you. It's a waste of money. Live without it. I the most thoughtful family member. You should be grateful." This relentless torment only occurred when we were alone, always waiting for moments when my husband was away and our daughter was at kindergarten. I didn't want to speak negatively about her to my husband, since she's his mother, but I wished he would listen. After much consideration, I hinted at my frustrations, but it seemed to have little effect. "I'll talk to Mom," he said, attempting to address the situation. However, mother-in-law would cry, claiming I was making things up. At one point, he even accused me of trying to deceive him. Feeling increasingly powerless, I remembered the saying, "Seeing is believing." Deciding to secretly record my interactions with my mother-in-law, I carefully placed the camera. As I pondered this, the torment from my mother-in-law escalated to an advanced level. We had moved in with her in spring, and as summer faded into autumn, one winter day arrived. My husband was away on a business trip, and our daughter was staying with my parents. It was snowing heavily outside. Normally, I would bike to my part-time job, but due to the weather, I walked and returned in the evening. Upon arriving home, I usually cleaned, did laundry, and prepared dinner. However, on this cold winter night with heavy snowfall, hand-washing delicate laundry wasn't ideal. Nevertheless, mother-in-law cheerfully handed me her laundry. "Here's today's laundry. They're delicate, so be sure to hand-wash them," she emphasized, knowing it would irritate me. "I'll wash them with warm water," I started. "No, you can't. The colors will fade and it'll damage them." "Absolutely wash them with cold water," she insisted. Frustrated by her unreasonable demand, I snapped, "This is ridiculous. Why should I hand wash with cold water on such a cold day? If they're that precious, wash them yourself. How dare you expect me to wash with cold water on a day like this?" Mother-in-law stared at me, her face reddening with anger, but I didn't back down. "Why don't you go outside, mother-in-law? You've been indoors all day and probably don't realize how cold and snowy it is. How dare you suggest sending an elderly woman out in this cold?" she retorted. "What kind of daughter-in-law are you? What kind of mother-in-law asks for cold hand washing on a day like this?" I was ready to confront her fully. I feel bad for my husband, but if we're going to live together, I can't always play the good daughter-in-law, I thought to myself, glaring back at her. Unexpectedly, mother-in-law grabbed my hand, and before I could react, she pushed me out the front door. As I stood shocked, she locked the door behind me. "You're not the kind of daughter-in-law I want. Get out. This is my house. You should be the one leaving," she shouted through the door, ignoring my protests. No matter how much I banged on the door, but there was no response. I was in a bind. I wasn't wearing a coat and didn't have my house keys. Luckily, I had my cell phone in my pocket. I tried calling the house and I could hear the ringtone from the other side of the door, but mother-in-law didn't answer. With no other choice, I called my husband, who was supposed to return from his business trip that day, but he didn't pick up. I sent him a message. "Mother-in-law locked me out. It's snowing heavily and I'm freezing. I'm heading to the nearby grocery store for shelter. Please get in touch ASAP." I started my trek to the grocery store. I briefly considered seeking help at a police box, but it was far from here, and with the heavy snow, it would take even longer. The grocery store seemed like the safest option. I hugged myself, trying to stay warm. My breath was visible in the cold, and the snow showed no signs of stopping. The accumulation was making the streets increasingly deserted. Cars, bikes, and pedestrians were nowhere to be seen. After what felt like a long journey, I finally reached the grocery store, only to find a sign saying it was closed due to heavy snow. Disheartened, I realized my only option now was the police box. I wondered how long it would take to walk there in the snow, feeling increasingly desperate. I pressed on, but I could no longer feel my fingers or toes. Checking the time on my phone, an hour had passed since I was locked out. I tried calling home again, but mother-in-law still didn't answer. As I walked through the transformed cityscape, heading for the police box, I suddenly heard a cry for help. Help! I stopped in my tracks. I was near a bridge over a river. I strained my ears and heard it again. "Help me!" Hurrying towards the sound, I looked down from the bridge. There, in the not-so-deep river, was a woman who had fallen and was calling for assistance. I rushed down the river bank to her. The icy water stung my feet, and the cold was so intense it felt painful, but I managed to reach her. "Are you okay?" "I can't move, it's so cold," she replied weakly. "Hang in there," I reassured her, trying to keep calm despite the freezing conditions. The arrival of help seemed to relax her momentarily. She leaned against me and then suddenly lost consciousness. What do I do? This is bad, I muttered to myself. I couldn't feel my hands or feet properly, and they wouldn't move as I wanted them to. "Someone help," I shouted desperately, but my cries echoed in vain. I thought it was all over. Then I heard a man's voice. "Hey, are you okay?" My husband's face came into view, rushing towards me with a panicked expression. I blacked out. When I woke up, I found myself staring at a white ceiling. "Bill, are you awake?" my husband asked, looking down at me with concern. I realized I was in a hospital. Apparently, he had pulled both the lady and me out of the river and called an ambulance. It had happened yesterday, and I had been asleep ever since. "How was your trip?" I managed to ask. "It went well. I couldn't answer when you called because I was on the bus. I tried calling back when I got to the bus stop, but you didn't pick up. There were no taxis running, so I ran home. I just happened to see you going into the river. What luck. I thought you had jumped in, but it seems it was the lady." According to my husband, the lady that tried to help had jumped into the river in despair. The cold water had shocked her back to reality, and she attempted to get out but couldn't move due to the cold. If we had found her any later, it might have been too late. "So, the lady was okay?" I asked, feeling relieved. "Yes," he nodded. "You should rest. You must be exhausted." Comforted by my husband's words, I drifted off to sleep. All the while, my anger towards mother-in-law simmered. A few days passed in the hospital, and I was back to my old self. Standing in front of my home after so long, I froze. Mother-in-law hadn't visited me once while I was hospitalized. Of course, there was no apology. She had locked me out on a snowy night, nearly causing my death. Honestly, I couldn't bear to live with her any longer. Feeling dejected, I opened the front door and stepped outside. To my surprise, mother-in-law was there, deeply apologizing. "Belle, I'm so sorry," she said earnestly. "What's going on, mother-in-law?" I was taken aback by her unexpected apology. "I never imagined something like that would happen. I truly regret locking you out. Please forgive me," she pleaded. I was speechless. This was truly unexpected. Mother-in-law continued. "I never thought I would say this, but I'm sorry." Suspicious thoughts raced through my mind. Mother-in-law, who had always been aggressive towards me, who had locked me out in the snow. Could this be genuine? "What will you do if I don't forgive you?" I asked, narrowing my eyes at her. Mother-in-law's hand twitched slightly. "I was freezing out there, you know. If my husband hadn't come, who knows what would have happened? Anyone would know what happens if you lock someone out in a snowstorm. If you didn't, does that mean you're not normal?" I added sarcastically. Mother-in-law's face turned bright red. "What did you just say? You think you can take advantage when someone's being nice? Don't get too cocky. My son said he'd end our living arrangement if I didn't apologize, so I did it. Now that I've apologized, let's forget about the whole locking out incident. Now get back to your chores," she said, her tone shifting abruptly. She had taken the bait so easily. My suspicions only deepened. I smirked, seeing right through mother-in-law's facade. Her remorse was all a lie. People don't change that easily, especially not someone like her. But just as I suspected, she began her antics again. "Make sure you hand wash my clothes with warm water," she insisted. "Are you still on about that?" I retorted, exasperated by her ongoing demands. "Only cook what I like. If it's not tasty, I'll throw it away." "This is hopeless, absolutely hopeless," I muttered to myself, feeling resigned. She's beyond redemption. I sighed heavily and turned around. Saying all this, my husband, who had been standing nearby out of mother-in-law's sight, spoke up. "Davy, her beloved son. What about work?" Mother-in-law noticed him and turned towards him. "I took the day off to be with Bill," he explained calmly. "But Mom, you haven't changed at all," Davy continued firmly. "No, I was just joking," mother-in-law hastily interjected, trying to backtrack. "It's not funny at all," Davy said sternly. "I told you to genuinely apologize to Belle and never do such things again." "But I did apologize," mother-in-law insisted defensively. "You were about to revert to your mean self. That was just a joke," Davy countered. "That's why it's not funny." I had warned my husband to keep his distance, but mother-in-law's reaction was as expected, if not more dramatic. She desperately tried to justify herself, but I couldn't help laughing. "Belle, what's so funny?" mother-in-law asked, puzzled by my reaction. "On the other hand, Mom, I'm talking now. Listen to me," Davy asserted calmly. "I'm sorry." Even mother-in-law couldn't ignore her beloved son's words. Tearfully she listened as he continued his lecture. "Why would you be mean to Belle when she agreed to live with us out of concern for you? I might have gone a bit overboard earlier, but I've never harassed her. I commented on the food's taste, but I just wanted her to know my preferences. I had asked for my clothes to be dry cleaned, but Belle insisted it was a waste and would hand wash them instead." Mother-in-law continued to complain, adding that Belle had thrown away her cosmetics right in front of her. She seemed intent on shifting blame away from herself. Unable to tolerate her denial any longer, I pulled out my phone and played a recording. "Today's laundry, it's expensive, so definitely hand wash it." Mother-in-law's voice echoed clearly through the room. She screamed and tried to grab my phone, but I dodged her and continued playing. "Definitely wash it with water. You're not the kind of daughter-in-law I want. Get out." The sound of her dragging me out and slamming the door, ignoring my pleas, was all recorded. Every violent action she had taken that day was captured on my phone. I had been secretly recording our conversations for some time now, ensuring I had evidence whenever I interacted with her. "Any rebuttal?" my husband asked calmly, confronting his mother. Mother-in-law was left speechless, unable to defend herself. "Is there anything else to say?" I intervened. "Yes, this is the end. You've trampled all my feelings of wanting to care for you. I want you to leave. I'm cutting ties. You can live on your own. We won't contact you again. Even if you reach out, we'll ignore it and won't meet. You sold the family home, right? You should have all that money, plus with your pension, you should be fine. We won't help. But wait, Davy. Are you abandoning me? Betraying your only family? Mother-in-law pleaded desperately. You're the one who betrayed us. My husband's voice was firm, leaving mother-in-law sitting there, speechless and defeated. The only sound in the room was the dripping of melted snow from the roof. From that moment on, things moved swiftly. While mother-in-law sat there, lifeless, my husband and I packed her belongings. Her hometown was a 2-hour train ride from our place. She had distant relatives there, but she had been estranged from them for so long that no one would probably care now. She rarely went out when she lived with us, so she likely didn't have any friends. But now, it didn't matter. Bye, Grandma. My daughter waved at mother-in-law, her cheerful gesture devoid of any sadness. Finally, mother-in-law broke down into tears as the taxi carrying her drove off, leaving behind her sobs. I felt nothing as I watched her leave. It was her own doing. With that thought in mind, I entered our home, feeling refreshed. Time passed, and rumor said mother-in-law lived alone in an apartment. We still received calls from her, so she must be alive, but we never met or spoke to her, just as we promised. She would probably live a lonely life, having destroyed the happiness she could have had. While listening to the washing machine, I served tea to an unexpected guest, an elderly woman, the very same lady I had saved on that snowy day. She had been living a lonely life filled with despair, but the cold river water that day had made her want to live a bit longer. My son offered to live with me. That's wonderful. His wife is lovely, she shared, but I didn't want to be a burden, so I decided to move nearby instead. That's nice. I've been lonely since my husband passed away. I thought life had nothing good left, but I was wrong. I replied warmly. I'm glad you realized that. As long as I'm alive, there's hope. Thank you for saving me that day, she said with a grateful smile. I smiled back at her, seeing a lady who had lived her life with determination and had now found happiness. Mother-in-law, on the other hand, had ruined her chance to live with her son and his family. There are so many ways to grow old, and everyone's path is different. Our own attitudes shape whether our later years are happy or sad. Seeing these two elderly women, I had a clearer idea of the kind of future I wanted to ensure. A happy future, protecting the peaceful days I have now. I reminded myself of the path I should take. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me deeply. We may not get along, but we're family after all. How could she say something so heartless? I felt lost. Thomas grinned and said, well, that went as planned. Mission accomplished. At that moment, I had no idea the chaos that was about to unfold. My name is Violet. I met my husband Thomas at work. I work in the office of a shipping company while Thomas is a truck driver. My first impression was that he's a robust guy, both physically and in personality. He's good at his job and kind to his colleagues. However, he wasn't so adept at the romantic game. Whether it was making a move or proposing, he was like a pitcher who only threw fastballs, no change-ups. But I prefer a straightforward man over a guy who thinks he's a playboy. As our relationship progressed and tensions eased, I found him quite interesting. Above all, he gave me a sense of security that I could rely on him. We got married and were blessed with 2 children. Our son and daughter have moved out and live on their own now. Thomas and I live in a large house. Mom passed away 5 years ago due to illness. Thomas and I still work together at the same shipping company. Thomas has been promoted to a supervisor and now handles dispatching. We had a happy marriage, but one worry was my brother, Jason. That is soft on Jason. Jason has been dreaming of becoming a rock singer since he was a teenager. He's still chasing his dream, pompadour and all, no matter his age. I won't discourage anyone from following their dreams. However, when he runs out of money, he comes to borrow from Dad. Dad, being soft, lends him the money. Dad lending money is fine. But has he ever paid you back, Violet? When you lend money, you should do it with the intention of giving. That means you shouldn't expect it back. Remember that? But Jason thinks he'll somehow make it. He's underestimating life's challenges. Isn't that risky? When I was young, I dreamed of becoming a novelist, Dad said. But Victoria's parents said if I was going to marry her, I needed a stable job. So I gave up my dream and chose to marry. I don't regret getting married, but I do regret giving up my dream. That was the first time I'd ever heard about my dad's younger days. So that's why I want to support Jason's dreams, I said. But it doesn't seem like Jason's putting in much effort. Do you really think he can achieve his dreams while goofing off all day? Thomas asked. Mountain climbing isn't just about conquering the peak. Every step you take along the way, it's part of the story. Well, you sound like a poet. Makes sense, since you wanted to be a novelist. Come on, you're making me blush with such direct praise. I'm not praising you, Thomas chuckled. Initially, I was worried that Jason had some dirt on Dad and was blackmailing him, but it turns out Dad also chases dreams, so he probably understands Jason's desire to escape reality. One day, Jason brought a woman home. Let me introduce you, this is Charlotte. From her name, I expected a dainty woman. She was, well, big. Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm Violet, the sister. Nice to meet you, Charlotte. Charlotte is 5 years younger than me but much larger in build. Our first impression of her wasn't great. She was curt to both me and Dad, leaving us with the impression that she had poor manners. Eventually, Jason and Charlotte got married, so she became my younger sister-in-law. Neither Jason nor Charlotte held full-time jobs. They were always quitting their part-time jobs in a huff. Charlotte practices jujitsu and has a short temper, often bragging about putting her arrogant bosses or seniors in joint locks. I just hope she never gets arrested for it. Jason brags about stories that aren't really brag-worthy, like headbutting a disrespectful boss. Two kinds of stories I really can't stand. Bragging about bad behavior in the past and bragging about fights. I think many women also find these kinds of bragging a turnoff. One day, Jason came home to borrow money from Dad again, and I finally spoke up. Jason, you're working, right? Why don't you have any money? I got into an argument with a plant manager just because I forgot to put away a card. Jason replied. I told him it was workplace harassment. He yelled again, so I gave him a flying knee kick to the chair. Charlotte chimed in, seemingly pleased. I decided that if Dad wouldn't say it, I would. Every workplace has people you won't get along with, but even people I initially disliked turned out to be decent later on. I've often been glad I didn't pick a fight. You and I lead different lives. My pride is taller than the One World Trade Center, so yelling at me is practically asking for a flying knee. Jason continued. I couldn't believe my ears when Charlotte cut in. Are you siding with a boss who harasses people? That's not what I'm saying. So you're lecturing me now? You better be ready for this. Jason replied. Ready to take this outside or here's fine too, Charlotte challenged. I was flabbergasted. What is she, a teenager, feeling threatened? I walked away, unable to believe she was actually picking a fight. Jason didn't intervene. Would he have stopped if it were his wife fighting his sister? Getting hurt would be the last straw. I knew I had to watch out for that couple. When I turned 50, Dad got sick and was hospitalized. It wasn't long before we had to say goodbye. People said he lived a long life at 80, but I didn't feel that way. I still wanted to talk about many things with Dad. When Thomas and I were alone, he said, Violet, actually, Lawrence. What? Never mind. Just tell me later. Before much time had passed since the funeral, Charlotte approached me. Did Lawrence leave a will? A will? Probably not. He was hospitalized so suddenly. And if there's no will, then the inheritance. You're already talking about inheritance. I guess you're not even sad. How dare you? Want me to put you in the hospital? Try me. I raised my voice. Charlotte grabbed my arm in anger. I was taken aback but didn't want to apologize. Should we call the police? What are you doing? You made me sound like a monster for bringing up the inheritance, so I thought I'd teach you a life lesson with an arm lock. You're the one who's wrong, Violet. Enough. Don't yell. What are we going to do about the inheritance? I was momentarily speechless, but then I glared at Jason. Aren't you sad that Dad passed away? I asked. That's irrelevant. Stop calling me stupid. I don't want to be called stupid by someone as stupid as you, Jason retorted sharply. What did you just say? The atmosphere grew tense until Thomas arrived. What's going on here? Thomas asked. Wife, you better tell your husband to raise the kids right, Jason snapped. Those words crossed the line. I'll pass that message right along to Jason, I replied, irritated. Good on you. I'm fed up with you, Violet. This makes my decision easier, Jason declared, dropping a bombshell. I'm the eldest son. That means the house and Dad's inheritance are all mine. Are you out of your mind? I exclaimed. I'm perfectly sane, Jason said stone-facedly. Just as we were stunned by his audacity, Thomas spoke up. Violet, let's try to keep a cool head. We're not making any progress. Fine, I said, frustrated. We sat down at the table to hash it out. The inheritance is all mine and Charlotte's. Violet, I want you to give up your claim, Jason insisted. That's ridiculous. Our dad isn't rich. If we split it between two households, there won't be much left, I argued. There's only two of Dad's children, me and Jason, so it should be divided between us, Charlotte chimed in. But Jason scowled. Look, Violet, you and Thomas both have jobs and are doing fine. I'm the one pursuing my dreams, so I'm the one who needs the money. Why don't you get a job, Jason? I retorted. Let me finish. Living in the house means no rent, and with the inheritance, I can take on the world. Dad was cheering for me, you know. The best way to honor him is to play Carnegie Hall. You can't even pack the local park, Phil interjected. What if I do, Phil? Carnegie Hall. Will you put your money where your mouth is? Jason challenged. What are you talking about? I seriously considered calling the police, I interjected. Thomas, what do you say? Can you give in? Jason turned to my husband. I cannot, Thomas replied calmly. Jason then asked, so you're asking Violet to relinquish her claim? Yes, and you're okay with that, Jason? I responded, incredulous. What are you talking about? Of course it's not okay, Jason said. At that point, Charlotte glared at me. Shut up. You've been yapping like a puppy this whole time. Such words should not be tolerated. I glared back at her, incensed. Is it cute to yap like a puppy only until you're in your 20s? Stop pretending to be a young girl. It's embarrassing for a 50-year-old hack. Take that back. I won't tolerate insults, Charlotte snapped. Thomas, wasn't it you who should have set her straight? What do you useless couple you are? Jason added fuel to the fire. At this point, I couldn't keep quiet. If you were as big as a hippo, I'd have slapped you a long time ago. Charlotte looked momentarily dumbfounded, then turned to Jason. Did your sister just call me a hippo? Violet, apologize while you still can, Jason demanded. I'll apologize when Charlotte does. Enough, both of you, Thomas intervened. Violet, calm down. Fine, let's proceed with the disinheritance, Jason declared. I looked at Thomas with wide eyes, searching for reassurance, but something in his gaze told me he had a plan. Why else would he agree to such an unreasonable demand? I had no choice but to trust Thomas. So, Jason, just to confirm, you're fine with Violet being disinherited? Thomas asked calmly. I've been saying that. Stop making me repeat myself. It's annoying, Jason replied irritably. What an infuriating couple. A wife who acts younger than she is and a husband who thinks he's smart, but is actually dumb, Charlotte sneered. Leave the money and move out already, Jason demanded. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. Aren't we still family despite our differences? How could she say such merciless things? Why should we be the ones to leave? I couldn't agree to this. We'll find a new place soon, but we have belongings. Please give us a bit more time, I pleaded. If you take too long, I'll throw everything outside, Charlotte threatened. Try it, and I'll call the police. Think I'll be scared if you mention the police? I'm not afraid. Call the Marines if you want to arrest me, I retorted, unable to contain my anger. I stepped outside, pondering if Dad bore some responsibility. Thomas smiled knowingly at my confusion. It worked. Our plan was a success, he said, reflecting on these moments that made him thankful for our savings. With savings, you don't need to borrow money. Even with zero debt, there are substantial monthly expenses: rent, utilities, food, taxes. Taking on more debt would naturally make things tougher, Thomas explained. I've always made it a point to avoid loans, pay in full for what I buy, and save a bit each month. Years of this effort mean we won't be in a bind when emergencies happen. Maybe Jason set a bad example. He lives impulsively and turns to Dad when he's out of money. It was one thing when Dad was working, but he had no problem borrowing even after Dad retired, I added. I always tell our kids how important it is to save so they don't end up like that. Thomas and I settled into our new condo after finishing unpacking. Thomas broached the topic cautiously. Let's consult a lawyer first, to initiate the renunciation of inheritance. Are we really giving it up? He asked. That's when Thomas finally disclosed what he had almost mentioned before. While playing chess with Lawrence, he quietly mentioned that he lost all his savings and is in debt, Thomas revealed. What? Because of Jason? I gasped, shocked. Yes, that made them even more unforgivable. Maybe that couple also shortened Dad's life, Thomas conjectured. You're not entirely right, but you're close, Thomas continued, surprising me with another revelation. Charlotte had yelled loudly at Dad and pushed him with both hands from behind. It wasn't just a one-time prank. It happened multiple times. Dad started fearing it was an attempt to induce a heart attack and couldn't say anything when Jason came to borrow money. I never thought they'd go that far. In other words, Lawrence had much more debt than assets. Do you get what I'm saying? Yes, now I understand. Inheritors receive not just assets but also debt. If the debt exceeds the assets, you can renounce the inheritance. Let's ask the lawyer. That's the best course. We consulted a lawyer and successfully renounced the inheritance. Just as I suspected, Jason and his wife barged into our new condo. Violet, you set us up, didn't you? Jason accused. Set you up? What are you talking about? I replied, playing dumb. Don't play dumb. There's no inheritance from Dad, just debt. You knew, didn't you? He snapped. I had no idea. This won't end with just an arm lock. Be ready for a chokehold, I threatened, pulling out my mobile phone. Hello, is this the police? I began, but Charlotte grabbed my phone and shut it off. Violet, how are you going to take responsibility for this? She challenged. That's when Thomas stepped in. Jason, I recall asking you multiple times if it's okay to relinquish the inheritance, right? So you knew it was drowning in debt, didn't you? I had no idea, Jason muttered. Whenever Jason needed money, Lawrence would lend it without a second thought. He gave out big amounts like it was nothing. I assumed Lawrence must be well off, I explained. Jason was at a loss for words, but Charlotte interjected. Nice try, but you're not weaseling your way out of this. We inherited those debts. You two need to do something about it. What responsibility are you talking about? My spouse and I are not responsible for any of this, I retorted. Hey, are you going to do something about this or not? Threats won't work on me, Charlotte challenged. Or should we lay it all out for a third party? I'll share every detail of what happened to Jason. Are you okay with that? How would I know that Dad went into debt just to give Jason money? If I knew, I would have stopped it. Do you even realize you shortened Dad's life? Jason finally responded. Unable to respond further, Jason stayed silent, but Charlotte remained defiant. If you're going to say that, are you okay with both of you ending up in the hospital? Enough of this nonsense. If you lay a hand on me or coerce me, it's jail time. I warned Charlotte. Your threats don't work on me. You're 45 and talking like some high school delinquent. Charlotte smirked and glanced back at Thomas. Wait, were those lines aimed at me? Right after saying it, you coerced me. Coercion is a serious crime, you know. You won't get probation, idiot. Are you a judge now? It's complex to decide whether probation applies in any crime. Don't talk nonsense when you know nothing, I fired back. Seeing Charlotte's anger intensify, Thomas turned to Jason. Jason, are you okay with this? Charlotte, just shut up for a second, Jason finally said, clearly feeling the tension rise. Excuse me, who are you telling to shut up? Charlotte snapped back, her menacing glare now palpable with danger. I said, if you want to fight, do it outside. I won't allow it in my house. Let's calm down for now. As Jason stepped out into the hallway, Charlotte followed. I quickly closed the door and locked it. Their arguing voices echoed, but I was more worried about causing a disturbance in the neighborhood. Did you just tell me to shut up? What are you going to do if I call the police? Charlotte threatened. Don't worry, I'll call an ambulance in a minute, I replied calmly. A few seconds later, Jason's screams echoed down the hall. I pretended not to hear him. Shortly after, I heard what sounded like a cry of pain, but I dismissed it. Jason and Charlotte had severed ties with our family with their insults. Whether they divorced or Charlotte got arrested for assault, it was none of my concern. A few days later, I received a call from Jason. Violet, I was wrong. Will you help me? He pleaded. Who is this? I feigned ignorance. Don't be like that. We're siblings, right? He continued, his voice strained. I couldn't help but feel it was too late. It turned out Jason was in the hospital. Apparently, Charlotte had broken his arm. It felt surreal, almost like something out of a comic book. Ever heard the term you reap what you sow? I'm genuinely sorry. Could you cut me some slack? I can't afford the hospital bills, Jason begged. That's unfortunate, I replied coldly. No matter how much he pleaded, I kept my distance. Jason seemed speechless after my harsh words. Switching the call to Thomas, I ended it abruptly. Don't call him by his first name. We're no longer family, I asserted before hanging up. Thomas and I did go to the hospital, but not to visit. It was better to settle it face to face. Jason pleaded politely, "Please help me. Debt collectors have come to the hospital's first floor. The nurse told me I'm scared to death." Thomas looked stern. "After the insults you and your spouse hurled, it's only natural for us to cut ties." "That's not what I meant. If we're not cutting ties, then why renounce the inheritance?" Jason looked down, his voice softening. "I apologize for what I've done, but I need your help. I have no one else to turn to." "What about Charlotte?" Jason pleaded. "We're divorced. A family falling apart," I replied somberly. "Then she's at the police station for assault." It felt unreal. "You repeatedly called my wife an idiot. If I had called Charlotte that, you'd never forgive me," Jason said, troubled. "People who spew hate often don't remember what they've said, but those on the receiving end don't forget. I have a good memory. I remember every word you two have said. I've heard it from Charlotte as well," Thomas interjected calmly. "The wife should be properly disciplined by the husband," Jason attempted to justify. "What does that even mean? Explain it to me," Thomas pressed on logically. "What did Charlotte mean when she said a wife should lay down her body? Is that even something you should say to a woman?" Jason seemed to have forgotten not just his own comments but also those made by Charlotte. "Yelling like a little puppy, that's a clear insult. As for my dear wife, you called her a young one-ape or a 50-year-old hack. Don't repeat it." "Sorry," Jason muttered. Thomas didn't let up. "You said it to me as well when I asked repeatedly if I should disclaim my inheritance. You told me to stop making you repeat yourself because it's annoying. It's too late for any excuses now." Jason lowered his head on the hospital bed, looking crestfallen. "I'm really sorry. Can you please find it in your heart to forgive me?" "No way. Charlotte called my wife an old hag, and you insulted me by saying I'm not mentally sharp. By the way, what does not mentally sharp mean? Explain it to me," Thomas demanded, glaring at the trembling Jason. Jason's eyes widened with a terrified look. "If I weren't in a hospital, I'd be yelling right now." "Let's just cut ties off completely," Thomas declared firmly. "You're the one who said to leave the money and move out quickly," I added, supporting Thomas's decision. Thomas looked down at the dejected Jason, then turned to me. "Shall we go?" "Yes," I nodded. After all was said, I thought Thomas might end up offering financial help out of a sense of divine mercy, but he stood his ground. As we left the hospital, a smile crossed my face. "I saw your scary side today." "There's nothing like that. Be kind to me, okay?" Thomas replied with a gentle smile. "Of course," I said softly. "The storm has passed. From now on, I hope for peaceful days, basking in the warmth of spring sunlight."
I understood what was happening as I watched my sister's in-laws' house from far away. When I realized the truth, I was shocked. I wondered about the intentions of my sister's husband and his family towards her all this time. How many times had they tricked my sister with a straight face? It was unforgivable. No matter what, I was determined to make them pay. My name is Sally, and I'm 45 years old. When I tried to wear my funeral clothes again after a long time, I couldn't zip up the dress around my stomach. At first, I thought my body hadn't changed much, but it was obvious I'd gained some belly fat. The last time I wore this dress was when I was 30. My sister Jane, who had a weak heart since she was young, sadly passed away at 27 due to worsening pneumonia that led to heart failure. It's strange that I was the only one who spoke with Jane before she passed away. I happened to visit her in the hospital that day. Jane probably had many plans since she was only in her second year of marriage. She likely never thought she'd leave this world so soon. When I remember her smile as she talked about wanting to stroll under the autumn leaves after leaving the hospital, it breaks my heart. On the day of Jane's funeral, when I couldn't come to terms with her tragic death, something happened. Just before the ceremony started, I went to the restroom. There I saw Jane's husband Bob talking on the phone in the nearby lounge. "Yeah, once the funeral is done and Christmas rolls around, things should settle down a bit." "Yeah, you're right. No, we should keep a low profile until the memorial mass about a year later." I don't usually listen in on people's phone calls, but this time I couldn't help but be curious about what they were saying. What does he mean by keep a low profile until the memorial mass about a year later? The deceased, he must mean Jane, right? The way Bob is talking, it doesn't sound like he's talking to a colleague. All of Jane's family is here at the ceremony. Who could he be talking to? "Sorry for keeping you waiting." "Yeah, I get it. No, the kid's fine. They don't suspect a thing. Neither my wife nor anyone in her family has noticed I have a child. Just stay home and relax." What? I was shocked. Did he just say he has a child? For the record, Jane and Bob didn't have any children. They decided not to because it was uncertain if Jane's body could handle childbirth. They were both in their first marriages, and we never heard anything about Bob having a child. What's happening? Honestly, Bob's strange conversation left me confused and overwhelmed with thoughts. But suddenly, I remembered the words Jane desperately tried to tell me just before she went into surgery. There's a child at home. After Jane lost consciousness and passed away a few days later without waking up, I never got to hear the rest of what she wanted to say. I was the only one who heard those words. The shock of losing Jane was so huge that I didn't have time to think about what she meant. But when I connected Jane's words about home with what Bob said about stay at home in their old house, which Sally wouldn't call their parents' house, just home. But there were no children in our family home either. After a bit of thinking, it hit me all of a sudden. Could it be that the child Bob was talking about on the phone is living at Bob's parents' house? When that idea came to mind, I couldn't sit still. If that were true, I don't think I could forgive Bob. After paying my respects at Jane's memorial service, I was eager to test my theory. I left the funeral home right away and went straight to Bob's parents' house. It's within walking distance from Jane and Bob's place. Bob is an only child, and his parents are getting older, so they decided to live close by. Jane had worries about living so close to her in-laws, wondering if she could get along with them better. But in reality, they hardly ever went back there and had very little family interaction. Maybe that's why even at Jane's funeral, Bob's parents didn't seem too upset about what happened. Instead, they seemed more interested in playing with their phones, which I found kind of strange. Well, I guess this is what happens when the relationship with in-laws is so distant. At least they could pretend to be more sympathetic at a time like this. Remembering how Bob's parents behaved, I finally reached Bob's parents' house. I hesitated to ring the doorbell. Everyone should be at Jane's funeral, so there shouldn't be anyone home. But what if someone did answer the door? What would I say? I still didn't have any proof of Bob's wrongdoing, and I wasn't confident about confronting someone without evidence. As I thought about this, I went around to the back of the house and peeked inside through a window that wasn't closed. I could see the whole room. Could someone really be in there? Just as my heart skipped a beat. Hey, stop moving. Look, stay still. Yeah. A child ran out into the yard, followed by a woman I didn't recognize. I instinctively hid and watched them from the shadows. The child looked a lot like Bob, with wobbly steps indicating he'd just started walking a few months ago. The woman seemed to be around Bob's age, and her eyes resembled the child's, making me certain she was the mother. Oh God, did Bob really cheat on my sister? When did this betrayal start? When did Jane find out? Even though my suspicions seemed to fit together perfectly, I had so many questions and didn't feel any better. Instead, tears started to well up. I'll never forgive him. I promised myself to make him pay for what he did to my sister. Later, I went back to the funeral home and attended Jane's burial in the churchyard. Even though everyone thought I left halfway through, when I explained that I couldn't handle the shock of losing Jane, they seemed to understand. I highly doubt anyone would suspect I went to Bob's house, but I was relieved that my sister's in-laws didn't seem to notice anything strange at all. The next day, I made up my mind to ask for a private investigation on Bob from the only detective agency in town. To my surprise, it was run by Jane's friend Layla, whom I remembered from the funeral. Layla told me that Jane had also asked for an investigation on her husband. After she requested the investigation, Jane got sick and passed away. Even though I have to keep things confidential, I think Jane would have wanted you to know, Layla said. With that, Layla shared the details and findings of the investigation Jane had requested. Once, even though they were engaged, Jane and Bob almost broke up. Bob got cold feet just 6 months before their wedding, saying he wasn't sure he could protect Jane, who had a weak heart, and he wanted some space. After a lot of thinking, Jane agreed and decided to distance herself from Bob. However, about 2 months later, Bob apologized and said he wanted to marry Jane after all, so they patched things up and went ahead with the wedding. After that, Bob worked really hard, even on his days off, because he wanted to buy Jane a house in the future. Jane talked about their relationship like everything was fine, like she was proud of it, so I thought they were okay. But I was wrong, Layla explained. In reality, right after getting engaged to Jane, Bob started having an affair with his childhood friend Nancy. They had dated before but broke up over a small disagreement, Even though Bob met Jane and got engaged, he still had feelings for Nancy. When Nancy reached out to him, those old feelings came back. To make matters worse, Bob's excuse about getting cold feet was a lie. Around the same time, Nancy got pregnant, and Bob was torn about whether to leave Jane and marry her. He even talked about it with some friends. But Nancy was firm in her decision. "If you stay with me, I won't ask you to marry me. But I'm going to have this baby," Nancy told Bob. Bob didn't want to break up with Nancy, but he also didn't want to tell his wife Jane about the baby. At the same time, he couldn't ignore a child he might have with someone he cared about. He didn't want Nancy to have the baby, but she was determined to keep it. Eventually, Bob opened up to his parents about the situation, only for them to say, "This will be our first grandchild, so let her have the baby." Bob's parents had always preferred Nancy as his partner since they knew her well from childhood. Plus, they didn't seem to like Jane much because she was frail and might not give them a grandchild, which they often complained about to others. Fortunately, Jane is frail, and she won't last long. Once she's gone, acknowledge the child and marry Nancy, Bob's parents proposed, and Nancy agreed. Though it was a twisted plan, it appealed to Bob. If his parents say so, then it must be okay, he thought. So it was decided that Nancy would have the child. Nancy, like Bob, was an only child, and her parents had already passed away. That's why Bob's parents spent a lot of time at Nancy's house, helping her during her pregnancy. The story about Bob working hard for Jane right after their wedding was a lie. He was probably visiting his newborn baby during that time. There were witnesses who saw Bob going to Nancy's house often, Layla explained. This suggests that the excuse of moving closer to their elderly parents was also a lie. They actually wanted to be near the child. As the child grew up, they respected Bob's parents' wish to spend more time with their grandchild, so Nancy and the child stayed more often at their house. With various excuses, they kept Jane away from her in-laws, and eventually, they stopped going home altogether. "It's enraging how they're endorsing infidelity as a family," Layla concluded. "Just a month ago, my sister found out about Bob's cheating. She was feeling sick and left work early, probably not realizing that Jane was home. Bob, who hardly ever texted or called when Jane was around, came home earlier than usual that day and apparently made a call somewhere. 'I got off work early. Can I come over now?' 'My wife? She's at work. I don't think she'll find out. She seems to be getting sick a lot lately and might go to sleep early. If I say I'm working late, I think I can stay longer with you,' Bob said. 'Yeah, I also want to live with Nancy and the kids soon. Every time she says she's not feeling well, I think she won't last much longer,' replied the other person. 'Yay, I'm looking forward to it every time.' Just imagining how Jane felt hearing that from her sickbed makes my heart ache. This incident made Jane aware of Bob's cheating, and she seemed to have hired a private investigator who happened to be her friend Layla. The investigation revealed everything, and just as Jane was about to confront Bob with a divorce, she collapsed and passed away. As Layla finished telling me all this, she lowered her gaze and said, "Jane must have been heartbroken. I couldn't agree more. I wanted to avenge Jane's pain. I couldn't bear the thought of Bob and his parents enjoying having a grandchild while Bob planned to remarry. But I've only just learned all this, and I don't know what to do." After thinking for a while, I had an idea. "Layla, are you good with computers?" At my words, Layla smiled and said, "I got this." The next day, I went to my sister's in-law's house. When I rang the doorbell, my sister's mother-in-law appeared on the monitor, looking surprised to see me. "Oh, Sally, what's going on?" she asked, sounding a bit anxious. "I need to talk to the family about Jane's things. Can we talk for a moment?" Hearing my request, my sister's mother-in-law fell silent, and the intercom went quiet. Oh no. Maybe she won't let me in. Feeling nervous, I waited for a while. And then Bob appeared, saying, "I'm sorry, Sally. The room was messy, so I had to tidy up a bit. Please come in." "Oh, Bob, you're here. Perfect timing," I said with a smile. Bob's expression stiffened. He probably thinks I haven't figured out his cheating yet. His face stiffened, likely because he's hiding something. In fact, I had just seen his mistress and their child through the window. I bet he was cleaning up after them. I wonder which room they're in. Bob and my sister's in-laws seemed uneasy as they watched me enter the room. As soon as I took a sip of the tea they served me, Bob asked, "What's this about Jane's belongings?" Yeah. It's about this," I said, laying out a photograph on the table. Bob and his parents froze as they looked at the photo. Bob, who is this woman? I asked. I don't know her, Bob replied hastily. In the photo, Bob and a woman were in bed together. The other day, this was sent to our house. It said that Bob is having an affair, I explained. Hearing this, his parents glared at Bob, and Bob shook his head frantically. Wait, I don't remember this photo, he shouted. Ignoring his protests, I laid out more photographs. Each one showed Bob and the same woman kissing or on a date at a nearby amusement park. People who cheat don't usually admit to their memory lapses, do they? I said, feeling the tension rise. I'm used to it, my sister's mother-in-law sharply retorted. What are you implying, young lady? No. Mom, you've got it all wrong. I don't know anything about this, Bob protested. Then what's this picture about? Even though you have a child with Nancy, I immediately responded to my sister's mother-in-law's words. My sister's father-in-law looked guilty and said, Oh, you mean this child? And is this woman Nancy? I asked, showing a photograph of Bob holding the child. What? The entire in-law family was speechless, and even though Bob kept denying the accusation, my sister's mother-in-law slapped him, calling him a worthless son. Do you have other children too? She demanded. Please listen to me, Mom, Dad, Bob pleaded. But my sister's in-laws ignored Bob's pleas, scolding him for betraying their beloved grandchild. What nonsense bringing this here? The picture was sent to her house. I don't know much about it either, Bob exclaimed. I came here seeking clarity, but it seems Bob does have a child, I said, preparing for a confrontation. Bob was at a loss for words. But honestly, Bob was telling the truth. He doesn't have any other affair besides Nancy. I didn't plan to reveal this, as I didn't want to be accused of spreading false information later on. However, this picture is fake. It's a composite one that I had Layla create. I could have used a real picture of the child with the actual person Bob cheated with, but I chose a combined photo because of certain reasons. I planned to confront him by asking him about the child, but luckily, my sister's mother-in-law revealed the truth earlier than I expected. So, your quietness means it's true, isn't it? Earlier, your mom also mentioned something about a child and Nancy, I said while my sisters-in-law stayed still where they were. The note that came with the picture said these kids are being looked after in this house. That's not true. My sister's mother-in-law quickly disagreed with what I said. Are you sure? Of course, it's not true. Then show me all the rooms. Huh? Without waiting for their approval, I stood up from my seat and headed towards the room next door. Hey, wait a minute. You can't just snoop around other people's houses. Bob raised his voice. If there's nothing to hide, then you should show me. That's not the point. Then what's the issue? Well, without waiting for Bob's response, I ignored the attempts of my sister's in-laws to stop me and peeked into the next room. She's not here, I concluded, and then I went upstairs to the second floor. Despite facing obstacles and scraping my knee, it was nothing compared to my sister's pain. I was willing to endure any number of fresh wounds. Pushing past my sister's in-laws, I opened the door to the room on the second floor, pushing Bob aside as I did so. Ah, there she is. In the room, Nancy and a child were sitting on the bed. Well, who do we have here? It was a different woman and child from the ones in the picture. What's happening? Bob asked. At my words, Bob turned pale, and Nancy looked puzzled, saying, A picture? Yes, it seems like Bob here has been cheating while my sister was around. Look at this picture. As I showed the fake photo to Nancy, her face twisted in anger, and she crumpled the picture. What is this? You were with another woman. No, Nancy, it's not like that. Just listen. Nancy was furious, and Bob looked pale. Having gotten the proof I needed, I'd added, So you were indeed involved with Bob, huh? My sister's in-laws were stunned, unable to believe what was happening. Why? You told me I was the only one. You said we didn't have to get married, and I wanted to have a child and be with you. And now this. Nancy, there must be some mistake. Maybe it's a look-alike or Photoshop. What do you mean, maybe? You can't deny it completely. I can't trust you anymore. For a moment, I was surprised by the mention of Photoshop, but since Bob was too flustered to deny it properly, Nancy's suspicions were at their peak. A man who's so unsure of himself, you'd be better off not trusting him. He ruined my sister's life, I said, offering my serious advice. Nancy's face hardened. My sister went through a lot because of him, but she probably understands that already. I don't need to say anything, I thought to myself. Now, I need to act like I'm on Nancy's side and get her to listen to me to achieve my goal of not letting any of Bob's family or Nancy be happy. I understand, Nancy muttered. Wait, Nancy, I'm serious about you, I interrupted Bob's desperate attempt to win Nancy over. So you weren't serious about my sister, but you told her you were, even made marriage vows to her. Looks like you really are an untrustworthy man, Bob, I said. At my words, Nancy's face darkened. With a fake photo and everything, she seemed to start doubting whether Bob's words were sincere. Good. If you were serious, you wouldn't be cheating from the beginning. No matter what, you should stick to one person, I emphasized. As I stressed my point, Nancy's expression grew even darker. Bob's face turned ghostly pale. He must have sensed the growing distance in Nancy's feelings. We should break up, Bob. I don't want to be your backup option. After seeing that photo, I can't trust you anymore. I could handle being the other woman, but I can't stand the thought of being the third one, Nancy declared, tears flowing down her cheeks. Bob instinctively reached for her hand and pleaded, Please, just listen to me. But Nancy pulled away, stating firmly, I don't need you to acknowledge the child anymore. Just leave me alone. As Nancy left the house with her child, Bob's entire family was saddened by the loss of both the child and the planned second wife. Meanwhile, I felt a sense of victory inside. Later, I had Bob write a legal document officially ending his ties with our family, cutting off all connections. Additionally, he agreed to relinquish any rights he had to the inheritance left by my sister. My father, who is usually quite stern, heard everything from me and stormed into my sister's in-laws' home. They were shocked by his sudden appearance and seemed to agree to renounce any claim to the inheritance, wanting to sever ties with our family completely. Well, even though we call it my sister's inheritance, it wasn't much. But it's a relief that not a single cent of her assets went to him, I thought. On the day I brought the photos to Bob's house, it seems one of the windows was open. As a result, our argument and conversation could be heard clearly outside, along with revelations from Nancy's friend who lived nearby. Everything that happened in Bob's house was exposed to the entire neighborhood. As a result, rumors spread that Bob's house was cursed, and he decided to quit his job and leave town with his parents. Meanwhile, Nancy unexpectedly showed up at our family home after about 2 months. She came bearing $50,000 as a gesture of apology and gratitude for helping her see the truth. She wanted to make amends for how she had treated my sister. While I appreciated Nancy's intentions, money couldn't erase the pain my sister had endured. It didn't feel right for us to forgive someone for something they themselves couldn't forgive just because they offered money. We understood Nancy's gratitude, but we couldn't accept money from someone who had done such a shameful thing, so I declined to accept the money. Instead, we suggested that it be donated to a nearby children's home where my sister used to work. Do you doubt whether such a woman would actually follow through with the donation? Of course not. I went with her to ensure the donation was made properly, so you can trust that it happened. If the money is used for that purpose, I believe my sister would be happy. I hope the children who have their whole lives ahead of them can find happiness, even on behalf of my sister. As for myself, it's hard to admit, but I struggled with the loss of my sister for a while, even experiencing mental health challenges. There was a time when it was so tough that I had to leave my job. But I've been gradually recovering, and now I work at Layla's detective agency. Leela and I became very close after that incident. I think it's because we were both comrades who had lost something important in such a tragic way. We found common ground. Although I didn't have a positive view of marriage because of what happened to my sister after being with my partner for 4 years, we got married last year. The experience of losing my sister during the COVID-19 pandemic made me realize that I never know when I might lose the chance to be with my loved ones. So I decided to get married. I want to cherish every moment with those I care about, without any regrets. Just watch me, Jane. I promise to live a long, fulfilling life for both of us. When I join you someday, we'll have a blast together, I declared, determined to live life to the fullest.
My name is Tammy, a 39-year-old professional employed in the sales department of a trading company. From my college days, I've been drawn to leadership roles, adept at rallying people together. Presently, I oversee a team of subordinates, rivaling the seasoned male counterparts in sales achievements. I take immense pride in the unwavering support I receive from my female colleagues, bolstering my role as a dependable manager. Yet, returning home to my apartment after a taxing day, I find no one awaiting my arrival. Having parted ways with my husband of 17 years and chosen to live separately from my 15-year-old daughter, I now dwell in a freshly rented apartment, surrounded by yet-to-be unpacked boxes. Despite the chaos, I harbor no regrets. This marks the commencement of a fresh chapter in my life. Let me delve into why I've embarked on this new journey. In the past, I resided in an apartment alongside my husband, Bob, and our daughter, Rebecca. Bob, a former college classmate turned spouse, and I tied the knot after reconnecting post-graduation and dating for 2 years. Initially employed in the sales department of a printing company, Bob transitioned into a self-employed web designer, operating from the comforts of our home. Our daughter, Rebecca, is currently navigating her way through 8th grade. The initial warning came in the form of a shift in Rebecca's demeanor. I asked for the moisturizing cream, Dad. Oh, my bad, sweetie. I completely forgot. I'll pick it up tomorrow after work, I promise. You're so useless. Can't you do anything right? Rebecca began casting colder glances my way, her words growing sharper with each passing day. Initially, I attributed it to her teenage years, dismissing it as a phase. Dad, want to catch a movie with me on your day off? Sure thing, kiddo. What's showing? Previously, Bob would always include me in such plans, but now it seemed he had no reservations about excluding me. Hey, can I have some money? We're going to the movies this weekend, remember? $300 should cover it. $300. Seems a bit steep. Can't you just use your debit card? Just get it done. I'll need cash for shopping and dining out too. Gradually, even Bob's treatment of me soared. Our interactions dwindled, leaving me feeling increasingly isolated. Then came that Sunday, a day etched in memory, when both Bob and Rebecca voiced their dissatisfaction with the breakfast I prepared. What's this? I've told you I want my eggs over easy. Get it right. And this soup is terrible. I've mentioned my dislike for mushrooms countless times, but you still include them. Can't you say something to her, Bob? Why should I? You can't even follow simple instructions. You're the adult here. The chill in their words left me unsettled. Something wasn't right. I needed answers, but by the time I realized it, it was too late. One week, upon discovering Bob's intention to venture out, I resolved to discreetly trail him. Bob's typical routine revolved around his home-based work. There were no scheduled appointments at the barber or the doctor, so why this sudden outing? Suspicion gnawed at me. Regrettably, my suspicions were confirmed. In the cafe awaited a young woman, a woman in her 20s, possessing a striking physique. As they departed the establishment, arm in arm, my head spun, rendering me unable to pursue them. The dreaded day I had long feared had arrived. My apprehension stemmed from a lack of confidence in my own appearance. I always harbored the fear that Bob might stray due to my perceived shortcomings in looks. While Bob exuded undeniable handsomeness, I often questioned why he had chosen me. Subsequently, I enlisted the services of a private investigator to delve into Bob's relationship with the woman. Your husband's paramour is a 26-year-old named Sofia Garcia, employed at a cosmetic surgery clinic. Among the photographic evidence presented by the detective, some were too explicit for me to bear directly. They depicted open displays of affection, hotel entrances, and disturbingly, there were images featuring a certain third party. And here's another. This one shows the three of them, including Rebecca. What could this possibly mean? So, it seems your daughter is involved as well. It appears that your husband's relationship with Sofia has the approval of Rebecca. I was speechless. A profound sense of isolation and abandonment washed over me. What had I done to deserve this? Suppressing the urge to cry, I mustered the strength to request the detective to also record conversations between Bob and Rebecca. Several times each month, they would coax money from me for their movie outings and shopping sprees. I was convinced that amidst their casual conversations, there must be indisputable evidence. Days later, as I listened to the audio recording provided by the detective, I was rendered speechless. She's so annoying. Can't even do the simplest things right, then tries to act like she's your mom. Why don't you just leave her? Sophia's been waiting patiently, hasn't she? Speaking of which, Rebecca, I think it's too early to talk about divorce. That's ridiculous. Sophia's been waiting, hasn't she? I discussed it with Sophia. I can't stand being around that ugly woman. Same here, but she's the one bringing in more money. So, you understand, right? Is that a yes? I wasn't sure. Yeah, that's the plan. If I rush into a divorce, I'll lose access to that money. We need to proceed cautiously, withdraw as much as we can, then let Sophia move in. Exactly. I'll need to gauge if Sophia can handle that lifestyle, and if not, I'll have to persuade her. But I think she'll be fine. She's so accommodating. Beautiful women just have a different way about them, you know? Yeah, I get it. I regret it deeply. Marrying that unattractive woman was the biggest mistake of my life. That evening, beneath the scalding spray of the shower, tears streamed down my face. I wept until there were no more tears left to shed, and in that moment, I resolved to take action. Enough was enough. If that was their scheme, then so be it. I refused to be taken advantage of any longer. I vividly recall the arduous weeks that followed. Each day, I buried my emotions and forged ahead with the preparations for my liberation. Even on the day of Rebecca's middle school graduation, my heart remained numb to any profound sentiment. Oh dear, I can't seem to settle on a hairstyle. It's quite vexing. Whose genes sculpted this face? Truly, Rebecca bore an uncanny resemblance to me. Gazing into the mirror, I brushed off her usual snide remarks. Hey, I need some cash. Around $400 should cover it. What else would a kid need $400 for? Besides, it's your graduation today, right? Obviously, I'll be hanging out with friends afterwards and grabbing dinner with Dad. Reluctantly, I handed over the $400, silently declaring it the final time. Rebecca accepted the money without a hint of gratitude. Hey, I'm planning to get plastic surgery soon. Plastic surgery? So you're bidding farewell to this face that supposedly resembles mine. I can hardly wait. A complete makeover before high school kicks off. Okay. Ha, I'm surprised. I expected you to be more opposed to it. What a disappointment. Well, I won't interfere. It's your body, Rebecca. You get what I mean, right? It's only natural to consider plastic surgery with a face like this. It's your fault, she asserted. Later, I drove Bob and Rebecca to middle school. Just before reaching the school, Rebecca requested I stop the car. Dad and I will get off here. You can head home, you know. I don't want my friends to see you, right? Of course, I replied, heading back home. I had no inclination to attend the ceremony. Everything proceeded according to plan, a welcome relief. Upon returning to the apartment, I awaited the arrival of a truck and 3 men. We'll pack and move everything out. With the amount of stuff, it should take about 2 hours. Thank you. I appreciate your assistance. That day marked my relocation to a new apartment, leaving the divorce papers on the table of the old one. I had requested time off from work and spent it touring various domestic destinations, relishing the rare freedom. Though perhaps I could have savored it more without the persistent calls from Bob and Rebecca. A few days later, I returned to the new apartment, refreshed from my journey. After finally picking up one of Bob's incessant calls, he exclaimed, "You finally answered. Where are you? What are you up to?" "Just relaxing in my room, watching TV. Why the urgency? You sound flustered. Is everything all right?" "What do you mean? Is something wrong? What do you mean by your room? Explain yourself properly." "There's nothing." "What do you mean? You saw it, right? The divorce papers." "That's it. No further explanation needed, right?" "So you knew about About what?" "If you mean your affair, I knew. I have no intentions of backing down. I figured, with your income, you can't support Rebecca. Tough luck, I'm filing for divorce and seeking alimony too." "Who says I'm going to pay alimony? We should discuss this matter calmly." "Sure, you can bring Rebecca along or not. It doesn't matter to me." With no desire to continue the conversation, I abruptly ended the call, powered off my phone, and severed all contact. I chose the caf for our discussion, the very same one where I had first seen Bob meeting with Sophia. But this time, only Bob showed up. There was no sign of Rebecca. She must be recovering from her plastic surgery. Poor girl. "Who's that with you?" I inquired. "This is my attorney, Mr. Johnson," Bob replied. "You brought a lawyer?" "Well, did you bring the filled-out divorce papers as I asked?" "As I've said, I won't fill out such a thing. I'll tell you as many times as it takes. I have no intention of breaking up. Do you just want the money?" "I do." "Do you think we can continue our marriage for that reason?" "What? Who said I'm after your money? Who said it?" You're making assumptions about people's feelings. I nodded at Mr. Johnson, who then took out his smartphone and calmly pressed play. What ensued was a conversation between Bob and Rebecca from that day. Bob's complexion turned ashen instantly. It's quite an experience to hear your own derogatory remarks played back to you. I don't want to breathe the same air as that ugly woman. If I carelessly break up with her, I won't be able to use the money. Bob's voice echoed through the cafe. No matter how many times I hear those words, they pierce straight through my heart. Knowing that this is his true sentiment sends shivers down my spine. A recording? What the hell do you think you're doing? Bob exclaimed. What am I doing? I think I should be the one asking that. Did you use the money? I want to clarify something before we proceed. You have been seeing Sophia, correct? I asked, studying Bob's expression. Yes, that's correct, Bob affirmed, nodding. In that case, Mr. Johnson interjected, if you have no intentions of divorcing, we will proceed with filing for divorce in family court. We will also discuss the division of assets. The court will examine the circumstances and ascertain the facts to determine whether the divorce is warranted. Mr. Johnson held up the smartphone. The conversation you had with your daughter earlier is quite significant in this case. In my professional opinion, divorce seems highly likely. Oh, I see. I came here today to discuss what happens next, I explained, pulling out various documents meticulously prepared for this occasion. This chart outlines the money I've given you and when, and this document details the utility bill payments. What? What's all this for? Bob demanded, clearly taken aback. And here's a record of withdrawals from our joint account, I continued, presenting another document. Rebecca's surgery incurred significant expenses, didn't it? Eyelid surgery, eye shape correction, double eyelid surgery, nostril reduction, filtrum reduction, creating tear bags, cheek and nasal bone shaving. The total costs amounted to $40,000. There's only about $20,000 left in savings. We used to have $70,000. You've spent quite a sum, haven't you? That was for Rebecca. I could replenish the savings. Do you realize I was the one who primarily contributed to that money? I could feel my anger rising. I'm willing to divide what remains in the account for asset distribution. I won't make any claims about the cost of Rebecca's surgery. However, what I do expect you to compensate for is the emotional turmoil I've endured. Keep that in mind. And by the way, have you been in contact with that woman, Sophia? No, not really, Bob replied. That's concerning. I had a private investigator look into her background. Turns out she has a criminal record. You need to watch your back. A criminal record? What for? Bob's alarm was palpable. She was charged with fraud and arrested. It seems she was colluding with the director of another cosmetic surgery clinic. What in the? She must have seen you and Rebecca as easy targets. My sympathies, and Rebecca's surgery. I hope it went smoothly. If not, we might have to negotiate with the hospital or even consider legal action. We'll need to assess whether the clinic is willing to settle. In cases like this, many clinics refuse to admit fault and become obstinate, Mr. Johnson added, causing Bob's complexion to noticeably pale. That's all for today. Send the divorce papers to Mr. Johnson. I will be providing my address. Wait, please, just one more thing. Can you lend me some money? Bob's plea was pitiful. I can't believe I ever fell for a man like him. Absolutely not, I stated firmly, leaving the cafe with Mr. Johnson, leaving Bob behind, visibly devastated. Rumors later circulated about Bob and Rebecca's downward spiral. Bob struggled to afford even a modest apartment on his salary alone. To support Rebecca, she had to take up odd jobs like newspaper delivery, and they downsized to a cheaper apartment, compromising their standard of living. Bob's web design projects weren't sufficient, and he resorted to day labor to make ends meet. It was truly pitiful, but Bob had to persevere. After all, he still owed me alimony. I decided to allow him to pay in installments. Paying the full $30,000 upfront would have been impossible for Bob, given his struggling business that barely covered his supplementary income. Taking out a loan was out of the question. I could have suggested borrowing from a loan shark, but I didn't want to subject him to that kind of pressure. A few days later, Rebecca called me. As expected, the surgery was a failure. It was far from what she had hoped for. Rebecca and I met at the cafe, having not seen each other in a long time. She still had bandages on part of her face. The surgery had left noticeable marks, and she would require further procedures to correct them. It was a dire situation. So still no luck reaching that Sophia girl, huh? Yeah, you were spot on, Mom. She saw us as easy targets, Rebecca remarked, gazing out the window with a thoughtful expression. She appeared more mature to me than ever before. Well, I should get going now. Part-time job first and high school homework. My schedule's pretty packed, she explained. Good luck, I wished her. Thanks, Mom, and I'm really sorry for all the trouble I've caused, Rebecca apologized sincerely. No need to suddenly be so polite. I won't be giving you any more money, okay? I won't bring it up again. With a nod, Rebecca left the cafe, marking the beginning of where I am today. I have few regrets. I'm content with my current life. Rebecca is practically independent now, and I hold no lingering feelings for my ex-husband, who had little to offer besides his appearance. I saw him recently in town, covered in dirt, working in construction gear, and a helmet. Did he always have such sorrowful eyes? He looked entirely different. I hardly recognized him. Making a living is challenging, and he deserved to face difficulties after squandering so much money. It's not all about looks. I truly believe that now. I'll continue to do my best just as I am. With the reset button pressed on my life, the future appears brighter than ever before.